It was only a chunk of green tomb jade, but Carl Zakin, the dread Black Doctor, was eager to commit murder for it. And Val Easton, Ace, Secret Service. Op went willingly into the grisly torture chambers of Chinatown to steal it back. For on it depended the success or failure of the Doctor's ghastly plan. Its possession could either kindle or quench a worldwide horror blaze. 1. The Woman in Black. The droning din of pre-dinner traffic was loud in Herald Square, 10 stories below, when Val Easton straightened from his travel bag and said, "That's that, Bradshaw. I'll reserve a berth on the night train before we dine." His companion, tilted in a chair against the wall, ran a palm over a gray blaze and otherwise black hair and grunted. "You chaps are always on the move. Might as well be traveling salesmen," Bradshaw snorted as Easton turned to the telephone. He was faultlessly dressed, without an ounce of spare flesh on his angular frame. His trim mustache was as black as his hair. He looked like a clubman in the middle 30s, without a care in the world. But Bradshaw was 48, a deputy police commissioner, up from the ranks at home in all the shady corners of the underworld. Val Easton was harmless-looking, rarely hurried, amiable. His slender figure was not one to attract attention. Few people were aware that behind that amiable face was the full power of the American Intelligence Service, sometimes loosely called the Secret Service. Having reserved a berth on the midnight train to Washington, Easton turned to Bradshaw. "First spare evening I've had to myself in weeks," he commented. "Dinner's on me, and 1,000 thanks for the help you've given me." Bradshaw raised a deprecating hand. "Not at all," he protested. "It's been a pleasure. Fact is, I am damned envious of your work. I am looking forward to future contacts with you." Val Easton chuckled. "Never can tell what's around the corner," he said. At that moment, the phone rang. "Pardon," Val murmured and answered it. "Yes, this is Easton," he said. "Put him on." His face settled into an expressionless mask as a gruff voice came over the wire. It was Greg talking from Washington. Greg, that heavy-set, saturnine man who stood at the right elbow of the State Department, as unknown and overlooked by the public as the actions of that subtle force which he controlled. "Greg the Chief." Greg's voice rasped out. "I was afraid I wouldn't catch you. Got something for you to do. Go to the home of Cartier Burkett on 5th Avenue. They're having a reception tonight. Formal, I'd say. See Burkett himself. Show him your identification badge. Get from him a sealed envelope and any personal comments he may make, and bring them here to me in Washington. Want it all, the first thing in the morning. It's important, got it?" "Yes," said Val. "Who is he?" "Cartier Burkett," said Greg gruffly. "He's an antiquarian, a collector. Specializes in Oriental art. He's just back from a 6-month collecting trip in China. Been doing some special work for me. I want his report. Come straight to the office from the train." Val hung up. He was smiling wryly as he turned to Bradshaw. "Sorry," he said. "The dinner's off. Got an evening's work before I make the train." Bradshaw threw up his hands. "I was afraid of it. Any help I can give?" "Guess not know anything about a Cartier Burkett on Upper 5th Avenue?" Bradshaw nodded immediately. "Who doesn't?" he said. "The Burketts are an old New York family, filthy with money. He's a bachelor. Used to be rated a great catch, if I remember correctly. Fooled the women. Only interested in his collection, I understand. He's on the board of the Metropolitan Museum and all that. I'm familiar with him because his place is one of the danger spots we keep an eye on. He has a collection worth several millions in a private museum built into his house. Burkett's gone half the time, and the place is an open invitation to all the big-time crooks who hit town. He takes all the precautions, of course. Special wing built on the house, iron bars, steel shutters, latest in burglar alarm systems. I've inspected the place. Seems to be safe enough," Val agreed. "More or less," Bradshaw stated. "The house is wired also. Special guards are on duty day and night. It's harder to get into than the sub-treasury. But it's a bet that someday some smart crooks will crash through and make a cleanup. And then we'll have Burkett and the insurance people on our necks to settle the thing. The department's detailed a couple of plainclothesmen for the evening. Well, Bradshaw shook hands and departed. A crisp, cool, bracing evening was coming when Val came out on the street. He shook his head at the carriage starter's lifted hand and walked over to Fifth Avenue, turned north with long strides. Always, when there was time, he walked. His best thinking was done then, and there was much to think about. Carl Zakin, the Black Doctor, was on his mind now, and Chang Chien, that tall, golden-skinned Oriental bez. Through the shadowy paths of international espionage, tales of Carl Zakin, the Black Doctor, had for years seeped like fantastic nightmares. Master spy. Incredibly clever and ruthless, he had been always a menace to those governments he worked against. And Chang Chien, who had come out of the underworld of France, a myth of terror, had proved no less dangerous. In company with the Black Doctor and Chang Chien were still at large. American intelligence had no reason to believe that they were not still plotting. So from high quarters had come orders to hunt them down, and it was this hunt that had brought Val Easton to New York, following a slender thread of information which had petered out when fully investigated. In the morning he would be back in Washington, admitting defeat. He was almost to 46th Street when the astonishing thing happened. A taxicab was parked at the curb, motor idling softly. He was abreast of it, paying no heed when a woman's arm thrust out, beckoning to him. He heard his name called in a clear, vibrant voice. "Mr. Easton? Mr. Easton!" Startled, Val stopped, turned. He saw the small black hat, the heavy black veil swathing her features, and the furred coat collar turned up around her neck, mantling her figure effectively. Black gloves covered her hands. A woman, all in black, and a woman of mystery. Then her voice metamorphosed into quick, vibrant seriousness. "Mr. Easton, don't go to that house tonight. Go back to your hotel. Go to Washington as you intended." There was a haunting familiarity about her voice. Nothing that Val could put his finger on definitely, and yet it was there. He said, "How do you know who I am, or where I am going? What makes you think I intend to start for Washington tonight? And pardon me, but how the devil did you know I'd be along here at this time? Only one man in New York knew that he was going to Washington tonight. Only one man knew he was going to Cartier Burkett's home. Only Bradshaw knew that. But not even Bradshaw knew that Valentine Easton would be walking along here at this time of the evening. Val himself had not known it 20 minutes before he had passed through the hotel lobby and come out on the sidewalk, half-minded to take a taxi. Not until the bracing night air was on his face had he decided to walk. And now this woman in black was here across his path, with full knowledge of his plans. She laughed again behind the veil, that haunting, vibrant laugh. "Doesn't matter, does it? I know many things about you, Valentine Easton. I know you are going into danger tonight if you go to this house. Turn back. Go to the train. Let someone else carry out this order for you." Val moved a step nearer, stooped, peered intently at her. But the shadows were thick inside the cab. "You know too much," he said crisply. "You say too little. What house am I going to?" That was merely to keep her talking, while he racked his brains and listened avidly for some slight clue to her identity. She gave him none. There was no laughter in her voice now. It was shamed, serious. "You know what house. You know I tell the truth. Turn back. One who wishes you well warns you." There was a foreign inflection about her voice. It smacked of Russian, and that baffled him still more. He had met many women in many countries, some Russian women, but of all these he could think of none who might be in New York now. who might know his movements as this woman did, who might be waiting here at the curb, mysteriously uttering her tense warnings. "I am interested," Val told her. "What else have you to say?" "I have said enough. Goodbye." "Not goodbye," Val informed her curtly. "We'll go into this further." He reached for the door handle and suddenly stopped, moved back a step. The small blunt snout of an automatic had slid over the windowsill. "Don't do that," she warned. The motor of the cab speeded suddenly. It lurched out from the curb, swept down the outer traffic lane, and left him standing there. The tail light was dark over the license plate, and the curb lights gave too little illumination for him to get the number. The cab swung right on 45th Street, vanished, and Val Easton, standing there, swore under his breath. The next moment he was exploding, "Follow that cab that just turned on 45th. A second cab had swerved into the curb unnoticed, its driver's hand raised inquiringly. Val wrenched open the door, leaped inside. The machine started with a jerk. $10 if you trail it without being discovered," Val called. The man threw up a hand in assent and swung into 45th Street. Only one cab was before them. The drawn rear curtain marked it as the machine they wanted. It whirled to the left, under the elevated on 6th Avenue. Val's driver swung in under the L pillars too. The two machines zigzagged across town, swung south on 3rd Avenue. Through the gray-black shadows they sped downtown. The cross streets fell back in swift succession. 23rd, 14th, Cooper Square, and then into the Bowery. Other machines shifted in and out ahead of them as they rolled along the Bowery. And ahead of them, beyond Bayard Street, the cab they followed turned sharply to the right and vanished. Val knew this district. That cab had turned into Pell Street, into the compact, Warren-like area of Chinatown, lying just off the Bowery. Val suddenly exclaimed angrily, "What are you doing? Follow that cab." The driver had whirled to the right on Bayard in seeming disregard of the machine they followed. He threw over his shoulder now. "Got a hunch, mister. It would have been too raw, tearing into Chinatown after them. If they ain't wise yet, we're tailing. They'd be plenty quick after we did that." "Something in that," Val admitted. The driver shot to the second block with his accelerator down on the floorboards, and with a reckless swerve, headed south again, turned and doubled into Pell, slowing to an idling pace. And they rolled sedately into the heart of Chinatown. To right and left, the balconied fronts of the grimy old buildings rose 5 and 6 stories. Lighted windows gleamed leisurely. Figures padded along the sidewalk. An elevated train thundered past on the Bowery straight ahead of them. They were approaching the head of Doyers Street. "Looks like they've turned into Doyers," he threw over his shoulder, but the next moment broke out, "That's the hack over there, ain't it?" They rolled past a taxi pulling out from the opposite curb. Its driver glanced at them without interest. Across the sidewalk, a woman was just entering a dimly lit door. A slender woman, swathed in a fur coat, with a small, perky black hat visible above the upturned collar. The door closed behind her. A sign on the window at the left of the door said, "Li Fui, Shan, importer, how about it?" the driver asked over his shoulder. Val relaxed in the seat and reached for a cigarette. "You win the 10, he declared. "Drive me back uptown." To the face at the window, the home of Cartier Burkett was on 5th Avenue opposite the southeast end of the park. It was of substantial brick, 3 stories high, imposing in its disregard of the modern world which had grown up about it. A new wing of brick also had been built on one side, 2 stories high. The windows of the new wing were set high above the street level, barred on the outside, curtained inside. It was well after 9 o'clock when Val Easton settled with his driver and sauntered across the sidewalk. 2 machines had just pulled away. As they drove up, a man loitered beside the steps, hands in his topcoat pockets. His glance slid over. Val unobtrusively went onto a machine at the curb. Val grinned to himself as he crossed the small portico to metal-grilled gates standing open. That plainclothesman had paid little attention to this arriving guest. The door swung open, and Val entered a spacious hall, octagonal in shape, floored in ebony parquet. At the back, a sweeping staircase curved up to the second floor. In the next room, a string orchestra was playing. He glimpsed couples dancing. Guests in evening clothes were eddying through the hall through an undertone of laughter, animated conversation. A black-clad manservant said blandly, "Your name, sir?" He was all of 6 feet tall, this manservant. His shoulders were broad, his face lean, hard. His firm, bald politeness held no trace of servility, and his eyes were direct as he waited. A small table beside the man held a sheet of typed names. Burkett, Val thought fleetingly, was amply protected. Here this man was a guard, probably a detective, sifting the guests carefully. "I am not on your list," Val told him. "I'd like a word with Mr. Burkett, please. I am Valentine Easton." A tall man with a snowy mop of white hair, talking with some guests a few feet away, turned. A murmured word to the others, and he stepped across. "I am Cartier Burkett," he said. For an instant Val's palm held a small gold badge so that only Burkett's eyes could see it. The other nodded. "I've been expecting you, Mr. Easton. The men's cloakroom is at the front of the hall upstairs. I will join you there in a few moments." Val left his topcoat and hat in the upstairs room, lighted a cigarette, and strolled out. Cartier Burkett met him at the head of the stairs. Burkett was half a head taller, 30 or 40 pounds heavier. His face was tanned mahogany color, bespeaking long periods spent outdoors in all kinds of weather. He had a hard, fit look, with his aquiline nose, high forehead, and steady blue eyes. Unspoken liking leaped between the two, hinted at only by mutual smiles. Val said, "I am a bit foggy about all this. I was ready to push off to Washington tonight when Greg called me." Burkett nodded. "I was to go down there myself, but I find I can't make it for a few days. Greg doesn't care to wait. The papers I am sending to Greg aren't quite ready. I'll slip up to my study shortly and finish them. Can you spare an hour or so?" "With pleasure," Val assured him, "just so I make the night train." "No trouble about that," Burkett replied. "While you are waiting, join the guests. I am going to open the gallery shortly. You may find it interesting." They turned to the stairs. Val said, "Have you any reason to anticipate trouble tonight, Mr. Burkett? I was warned not to come here." Burkett glanced at him from eyes suddenly frosty, alert. "Who warned you?" he asked. "I don't know. A veiled woman?" "I can't place her." "I understand you are just back from the Orient. You've evidently been doing some intelligence work for the department. Did you bring back any enemies that might come to a head here tonight?" "No," Burkett said, positively. "I am certain of that. In China, I kept my eyes open for certain things Greg was interested in. But no one over there had any reason to suspect such was the case." "You weren't told what trouble to expect?" Val shrugged. "Sorry, no, but the circumstances were so unusual, I have no reason to believe the warning was not given in good faith." They were halfway down the staircase now. Burkett's laugh was that of a man without nerves. "I doubt if there is any cause for alarm, Mr. Easton. The place is well guarded. This is not an elaborate evening. There are no jewels or valuables among the guests worth stealing, I am certain. My collection has never been bothered. The most valuable pieces are kept in a special vault to which my sister and I alone have the combination. It would take at least 24 hours for the best-equipped cracksman to penetrate it. It is impossible to short-circuit the alarm system or circumvent it." Burkett chuckled. "Enjoy yourself while you are waiting. Ah, here is my sister Adelaide. May I present Mr. Easton, who is going to save me a trip to Washington? Adelaide?" Swift comprehension flickered in Adelaide Burkett's eyes. She was almost as tanned as her much older brother, not more than 24 or 5, this girl. She was tall, slender, in a sheath-like evening gown of wine-colored velvet. Brown tints made her eyes deep and shadowy. Her hair was waved close along her head and caught low in a knot at the base of her neck. A wide, generous mouth, a direct look, and a healthy, alert manner made her as likable as Cartier Burkett himself. For all of 10 minutes, he was with her, strolling about, meeting the guests, chatting briefly. Adelaide Burkett apparently knew who he was, why he was there. She mentioned that she had been to China with her brother, acting as secretary. Val told her of the warning, watched her reaction. Adelaide Burkett quirked her lips, frowned, shook her head. "It's Greek to me," she stated. "But if Cart says there is no reason to worry, I suppose there isn't. We're rather well guarded here." She left him presently. Val moved about alone, thinking. He could not rid his mind of that black-veiled woman who had vanished into the shadowy shop of Le Fuishan. The name of Li Fuishan was not familiar, but it sharpened memories, released a flood of conjectures. A vague, disquieting sense of impending disaster was taking possession of him. Cartier Burkett had vanished, in his study probably, finishing his report to Greg. Now and then Val caught a glimpse of Adelaide Burkett playing the perfect hostess. Smiling, animated. The guests had about all arrived shortly. They would be admitted to the piece de resistance of the evening, Cartier Burkett's latest acquisitions. Then, with one more warning than that, Val's premonitions were borne out. Val was standing at the foot of the staircase in the big octagonal hall when the girl descended rapidly and stopped before him. He had met her a Miss Elston. She had a dry, dusty, bookish look about her, despite the soft white evening gown she wore. Shell-rimmed glasses seemed to belong on the face. "Where?" she gasped. "Is Mr. Burkett?" Her face was chalk white. Her eyes wide and frightened, her fingers were crumpling and uncrumpling a handkerchief, and she gave every indication of an unnerved, terrified woman. "I can't say exactly," Val told her. "I think he's busy. Is something wrong?" "I saw a face," she told him breathlessly. "It was near the window when it appeared. Horrible, ghastly. It looked in, saw me, and vanished." Val put a reassuring hand on her cold fingers. "What did it look like?" Miss Elston gulped. "I can't tell you," she replied uncertainly. It was ghastly. He wore black. I saw that a hat was pulled low over his face. The face was grinning as it looked in. I could see teeth in the horrible mouth, and the eyes seemed to glitter. When they saw me, the face was gone instantly," Val said to Miss Elston calmly. "What room were you in?" "The back bedroom on the right side of the hall," she babbled. "I stepped in there to see how it was furnished. The light was on when I entered." "Quite so," Val said calmly. "I'll attend to this, Miss Elston." "I suggest you mingle with the guests and forget it," she shuddered, forced a smile tinged with relief. "I will," she agreed. "And don't say anything about it," Val cautioned. "No," she promised, "not a word." Cartier Burkett had gone into the next room, where they were dancing. Val found her in there at the back, talking to an elderly man with a valetudinian and glistening prince nose. She looked up as Val approached, caught his eye, came toward him with a questioning smile. "Where is your brother?" asked Val. "In his study." "Why?" "Miss Elston saw a face at one of the back bedroom windows. The room at the right of the hall, I believe." She became grave instantly. "Impossible, unless someone had a ladder. Perhaps someone has." She shook her head. "No, I can't see how the outside of the house is guarded. It always is at night." "Queer," Val admitted. "But she seems positive that she saw something outside the window." "I say, would you mind showing me the back of the house before you disturb your brother?" She took him through French doors at the rear of the room, through a big dining room where a white-aproned maid was busy at a sideboard, and on back to a butler's pantry and a spotless green and white kitchen where other servants were working. She closed the back door behind them. It took some moments for their eyes to get accustomed to the darkness. She said under her breath, "One of the watchmen should be back here somewhere." A tiny formal garden lay behind the house, L-shaped. The newer wing built to hold Cartier Burkett's collection did not extend back as far as the house itself. On the right, an apartment house towered high. On the left were the higher walls of another great building. Inexorably, the city had closed in until now this old mansion with its tiny walled backyard was an oasis in a wilderness of stone, brick, steel. The traffic out on Fifth Avenue sounded muted, far away. "I'll look them up while you go back in," Val suggested. "It's a bit cold out here, and you are not wearing a wrap." "No." "I'd better go too," she decided. "The men won't know you." So they went together along a flagstone walk, and as they went, Val looked up at the back of the house, rising 3 stories above them. There was no back porch, just the house wall, 3 sheer stories. Windows on the second floor glowed with light. Those on the third floor were dark. Along the whole back of the house was no spot where a man might peer into one of the windows. They turned the house corner along a fringe of low-trimmed bushes in the shady alley behind the annex. Adelaide Burkett walked slightly ahead, confident, unhurried, but suddenly she wavered, lurched forward. A sharp little cry burst from her. Val jumped forward, exclaiming, "What is it? Look out! Don't step on it!" But her warning was too late. 3. The crimson lines. Val's foot struck something soft, yielding. He recoiled from the feel of it, caught in his pocket for matches. A man was lying there on the flagstones, lying face down, arms stretched out limply above his head. Adelaide Burkett uttered a low exclamation of dismay. "It's one of the guards," she cried under her breath. Val held the flaring matches close as he bent and turned the figure over. It came limply, slack, dead weight. Curly black hair lay damp and close to a bare head. A pallid face turned up to them, ghastly in the matchlight. The open eyes gleamed white in a fixed stare. "He's dead," Val said, straightening. Val bent again, looked, frowned. "He seems unmarked. It's queer. Wait." As the matches died out, Val hastily lighted others. He held them close to the coat front, and the yellow glow limned a damp, darker stain against the dark fabric of the coat. In that stain, a half-inch slit through the woolen threads was barely visible. "Better not look," Val urged quietly. He lifted the coat collar and looked beneath. The tiny slit was over the heart. A crimson stain splotched the shirt, and the shirt was slit too, where a thin, keen blade had driven through to the flesh beneath. "He was stabbed," Val told her. "We want the police. Take me in to your brother. Can we go around by the front and notify the detective on duty there?" She did not question his decision. "This walk leads to the front, but there should be another man on duty back here? I'll have the man out front look for him." "Don't want to waste any time." They were already skirting the side of the annex. As they went, Val noticed it had no windows in the back or on the side. They walked on cement beside it, and a high brick wall rose at their right. Beyond the wall towered the big apartment house. They came out through a stout iron gate into the semi-glow of Fifth Avenue, where pedestrians trod the sidewalks, and automobiles and lumbering buses passed. Automobiles were parked along the curb, chauffeurs idling in some of them, and near his post at the foot of the house steps the detective still loitered unobtrusively. "There is a dead man at the back of the house," said Val. "One of the guards may be another back there also." A guest claims she saw a face outside one of the second-story windows. The transformation in the other was amazing. His lethargy left him like a discarded coat. "My partner went back there a few minutes ago," he jerked out. "I've been waiting for him. Lord, I'd better telephone the precinct station." "I'll do that," Val said. "You search the backyard and look for that man who is outside that window." He spoke more crisply than he should. He knew it at the quick stiffening of the other, but there was no time to explain. He turned to the steps before the detective had time to reply. The big octagonal hall inside was strangely deserted. The orchestra was playing softly, but the guests were no longer dancing. A faint hum of voices over the music in the next room marked where they were. Adelaide Burke said to the guard at the door, "Has Mr. Burke taken them into the wing?" The guard looked down at her alertly. Despite her remarkable control, one could see that she was under a strain. Val spoke. "Bring. Here's Mr. Burkett." A shrug answered him. "I can't say, sir. I have not left the door here. I heard Jennings the butler announcing that Mr. Burkett wished everyone to come into the gallery." Adelaide Burkett said quickly, "We'll find him in there." "Watch this front door carefully," Val instructed the guard. "Let no one in or out until you are sure who they are. A man has been killed at the back of the house." He left the doorman gaping after him and followed Adelaide Burkett inside. A number of the guests were bunched at one side of the room. On the wall there, a long silver-embroidered tapestry curtain had been drawn aside, revealing a low doorway. By standing on tiptoe when he reached the edge of the jostling group, Val was able to see the massive steel edging of the door Bradshaw had mentioned. It was open now, and through the entrance the guests were filing slowly. Soft shaded light was visible in the annex which housed Cartier Burkett's treasures. Short of shoving rudely, there was no way to get through the jam in the vault doorway. Adelaide Burkett raised her voice. "If Mr. Burkett is in the gallery, will someone please ask him to step out here?" She took Val's arm and drew him back where her words could not be overheard. "I don't believe Cart is in there," she exclaimed under her breath. "If he had been down here, he certainly would not have asked the butler to invite them into the gallery. Cart would have done it himself." "Probably busy in his study," Val suggested. "He promised to finish the report I came for as soon as possible." She caught his arm, said with an apprehensive catch in her voice, I'm afraid it isn't like Cart to do a thing like this. Will you come up to the study with me?" Of course. He led him to the front hall, where the black-clad doorman was standing flat-footed at his post, shoulders hunched and one big fist clenched as if expecting trouble momentarily. He spoke to them with suppressed excitement. "Do you need any help, Miss Burkett?" "None, thank you, Wilkins," she refused. She tapped swiftly up the stairs ahead of Val. She hurried to the front of the hall, opened a door. The room was pitch black. Val was at her shoulder when she clicked the light switch. For the space of half a dozen heartbeats, she stood there staring, while Val moved in beside her. On all four sides, shelves of books reached clear to the ceiling. In the opposite wall, a fireplace was topped by a carved mantel on which sat three slender, graceful Chinese vases. To the left of the fireplace, before the drawn drapes of a window, was a small, flat-topped desk and a chair. Before the fireplace was a massive leather-covered easy chair, and on the other side of the chair was a low mahogany table stacked with books, periodicals, smoking jar, pipes, and an ashtray. Those were the physical details of Cartier Burkett's study. But Cartier Burkett himself was not there. Then Val saw what she saw, was already starting across the room when she exclaimed, "Those papers on the floor! Cart never left them like that." The desktop had been swept clean of all papers. They littered the floor around the chair, envelopes, typewritten sheets, bills, documents, scattered in confusion. Adelaide Burke stopped at the corner of the desk. "These were all in order on the desk 2 hours ago," she burst out. "I saw them." Cart's mail had accumulated. He hadn't had time to go through it yet. And now, look at that," she pointed. The desk drawers had been opened and closed carelessly. Val looked in one and found it looted. The aroma of tobacco smoke was still strong on the air. A pipe lay on the green desk blotter with a scattering of ashes at the mouth of the bowl, as if the pipe had been dropped hastily. Val bent, blew the ashes, and uncovered 2 charred spots on the blotter, touched the pipe bowl, and found it still warm. He scowled at the jumbled mass of papers on the floor as he lifted the telephone receiver off the cradle and dialed police headquarters. A few crisp words to headquarters sketched what had happened, and Val turned away from the telephone. "Your brother was here a few minutes ago," he said. "He didn't make this mess, of course. He probably went down to the gallery after all, and someone went through his desk after he left." "You go down," Val urged, "and look for him in the gallery. I'll poke around up here before the police come." "No," she refused flatly. "I don't think he's down there. I'll stay up here." Silently, Val turned and scanned the room. 2 windows were set in the bookcase at their right. They looked down on Fifth Avenue, he saw when he pulled the drapes. Both windows were locked on the inside. No hiding place in here. Val's eyes dropped to the great blue and white rug covering the floor. It was a beautiful lotus flower design. Val lifted his head, nodded at a single door set in the wall opposite. "I'll have a look in there," he said casually. "Be out in a minute." He walked to the door without looking at the rug again. He did not want her to see what he had seen. It was plain enough, and yet the design of the rug masked it from the casual glance. 2 tiny dark stains by one of the lotus flowers. 2 little stains red against the white. Where there was no red in the design, there was another drop, and another widely spaced across the soft background of the rug, drawing a gruesome trail to that single door set in the bookshelves. Adelaide Burke moved toward the door as Val did. She obviously intended to enter the room also. Val did not try to stop her. She sensed something was wrong, and to tell her might anticipate more than the truth. The door opened to his touch. The switch clicked. The room was flooded with light. A bedroom, masculine, severe, with dark hand-rubbed furniture, a few Chinese prints on the walls. "He's not in there," she said, and there was sudden relief in her voice. A gruesome trail was on this side of the door also. 1 drop, another drop, and still another, leading inexorably to a second door across the room. Val said, "What door is that?" "The closet, I think," said Val. "You'd better go back." "Why? Why do you think so?" Their mutual restraint made the growing tension more electric. Val drew and expelled a regretful breath. "I'll tell you in a moment," he replied, and stepped to that closet door, whipping out his handkerchief as he went. He laid the white linen square over the knob and opened the door at his shoulder. Adelaide Burke whimpered suddenly. "It's Cart. Oh, dear Lord. He too." It was there almost as Val had expected to find it. A huddled form on the floor of the closet. A motionless form, as lax and still as that lifeless body in the night behind the house. The shining patent leather shoes, the formal evening clothes, and dimly the shock of white hair back in the closet marked Cartier Burkett at first glance. He used scanty ceremony in dragging Cartier Burkett out of that cramped hideaway into which he had been thrust. Val was red-faced, panting as he lay, Burkett face up on the bed, and examined him swiftly. Adelaide Burkett cried fiercely, "He's been murdered!" "No," Val objected. "No, I don't think so." For when his fingers settled on Burkett's wrist, they detected the faintest beat of a pulse. Val rapped, "Get an ambulance at once." She fairly flew into the next room. As he bent over Burkett again, he heard her sharp, imperative tones at the telephone. Burkett's shirt, front and waistcoat were bloody. The same tiny familiar slit was visible in the cloth. Burkett, too, had been stabbed over the heart with a long, slender blade. But this stroke had not gone true. Nothing could be done now. Skilled medical attention was needed. Val went into the next room. "Is there a gun up here?" he asked Adelaide Burkett. "No. What are you going to do?" He was already leaving the room, grim-faced, quit moving. Keep an eye on him, Val directed from the door. Better lock yourself in. He ran to the stairs. Short minutes had elapsed since they had hurried up with foreboding. Now as he ran down 2 steps at a time, more foreboding gripped Val. He barked to the big guard at the door. Has anyone come down since we went up? No, what's the matter? Plenty. Burkett has been stabbed. Police and ambulance are on their way. Collar. Anyone who comes down. Wilkins' hard face said. He dropped his perfect grammar. Won't do me a hell of a lot of good to watch these steps. There's a back flight, too. Damn, Val exploded. I didn't know about them. Try to watch both stairs. 4. The Black Dr. Vale went swiftly across the polished floor to the vault-like door of the treasure gallery. The orchestra was still playing softly behind the palms. Val smiled mirthlessly, stepped into the humming life that filled the gallery. 2 stories high, the vaulted roof swept overhead. Great bronze chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and through intricate frillwork backed by colored glass, the light dropped in a soft, even glow. Cartier. Burke's wealth had drained every corner of the Orient. Marvelous old tapestries hid the entire expanse of wall space. Great glass cases held the beauty of long-dead dynasties. There was pottery and porcelain, enamelware and glass, bronze lacquerware and marvelous carvings in wood and ivory and jade. There were textiles of beautiful silks and embroideries. Val pushed in among the well-dressed guests, grouped about 6 big glass cases in a single row. He glimpsed the contents of one case: jade, dozens of pieces, intricately carved, superbly colored, mutton fat, jade, milky and opaque, and light green jade, and lavender jade, bright apple green jade, and white jade spotted with the same green. Bowls, vases, bells, amulets, necklaces, moving through the crowd. Val looked to right and left sharply. He saw a tall, portly butler standing apart, and went to the man. Are you Jennings? I am, sir. Did you let these people in here? I did. At Mr. Burkett's request, sir, the butler answered with growing frostiness. You saw him in his study? The butler shook his head. Mr. Burkett sent word by one of the maids he was busy and requested me to open the gallery door and admit the guests. I see, said Val, and suddenly whirled around as a woman cried out, What is this man doing? Her voice had come from the end of the row of cases. At that spot, the people suddenly began to mill in confusion, jostling together. Some were trying to get away from the case, some pressing in toward it. Standing on tiptoe, Val could see over the heads to where that cry had been uttered. He saw a figure straighten beside the end case, a tall figure, dressed in formal black evening clothes. The man stepped from the case, snarling for an instant over the milling heads. He and Val looked at each other. And for the first time that night, Valentine Easton felt his blood run cold. In all the world, only one man could be that tall, stooped figure with the pale, bony, cadaverous face and blazing eyes. Only one man could have penetrated among 200 carefully sifted people within this guarded domain of Cartier Burkett. There had been some attempt at disguise, a little padding of the cheeks from inside, a few lines carefully changed on the face by clever shading, but Val would have known that face anywhere. It was Carl Zakin, the Black Doctor. Val Easton was perhaps the only man in that softly lighted gallery who realized the terror among them. Master spy, incredibly clever, cold-blooded, and ruthless. The Black Doctor killed without the slightest hesitation. Clear now was that dead body of the guard. The savage knife thrust dealt Cartier Burkett. How Carl Zakin had entered, what his purpose was, did not matter. It was enough that he was here. Val was unarmed. He reached for an ebony pedestal on which sat the small bronze figure of some Chinese god. He caught it up, leaped from his perch, and started for the crowd of milling guests. The heavy bronze weight was comforting. He caught a glimpse of the Black Doctor, still backing away. Grinning now, That pale, ghastly grin that could be so terrifying, serving as it did as a window for the soul beneath. Zakin carried something in one hand, and with the other was reaching inside his coat. "Get back from that man," Bell cried out. "He's dangerous." But in the confusion ahead of him, his words were lost. He passed the end case, where the Black Doctor had been standing. A small, powerful instrument had ripped the lock and hasp clear out of the wood. On a bed of soft black velvet in the case, one single object had been displayed. It was gone now. The confusion was increasing. "Let me through!" Val shouted as he pulled and shoved. And suddenly, without warning, the lights went out. An instant later, in the pitch blackness, a woman cried out, choking. "Been strangled," gasped Val, felt a sudden smarting in his eyes and nostrils. Tear gas had been loosed. Already he could feel the burning sensation in his eyes, the sudden flood of tears, and he started to gasp and strangle. Val won past the last staggering figure, careened off a case, and went forward 3 paces before he opened his eyes. The big gallery was still in tomb-like blackness. Wild confusion lay behind him as he plunged forward. As he had guessed, there was no gas here. Back of where the Black Doctor had been standing, the weapon, a small fountain pen, gas gun, had shot the deadly fumes into the crowd of guests, and for some moments it would not drift back of its point of origin. Zakin apparently had vanished. Val lost his way. It was some time before he located the door and passed through, leaving behind mad confusion in which women's screams, men's oaths were lost in general strangling helplessness. Midway of the polished floor he met another figure coming toward him. A brisk voice barked, "Who's it?" A big hand clapped on his shoulder. "That you, Wilkins?" "Yeah." "Oh, Mr. Easton." "Hell's busted loose. Burkett's collection has been raided. Anyone gone out the front door?" "Nope, but somebody just lammed upstairs in a hell of a hurry, didn't stop when I asked who it was." "Let's have your gun, Wilkins, don't argue, I need it. That was the crook going upstairs. He's a killer." "Here you are, then." Wilkins thrust his automatic into Val's hand. Wilkins was swearing with amazement as Val made for the stairs. He was halfway up when he heard a shrieking siren. The police, long overdue, or the ambulance had arrived. Panting, Val stopped at the head of the stairs and listened. In the dark, close by Adelaide, Burkett burst out, "Who is it? What is wrong downstairs?" "Easton, trouble in the gallery." "A thief used tear gas. Did you hear anyone come up these steps?" "A few moments ago someone ran up, made no answer when I called, and went on to the 3rd floor." "What's up there?" "Bedrooms, bath, guest rooms. The servants who live in have their rooms up there too." A fist hammered loudly on the front door. "Better go down and take charge," Val urged. "If that's the police, tell them to surround the house." "Have the master light switch investigated?" "The current must have been cut off there. The 3rd floor stairs were close." Val took them more slowly. Warily, he still had the heavy bronze statue in his left hand, Wilkins' automatic ready in his right. Zakin must be on that 3rd floor, and it was dark too. Still deserted. The quiet up here was ominous. Val slipped toward the back of the hall, guiding himself by an elbow brushing the wall. He moved deliberately toward the back room on the right side. The dry, bookish Miss Elston had seen the face just below it. Her description now was understandable and like a guiding signpost. She had seen the Black Doctor there on the sheer outside wall. How he had gotten there was still a mystery. But Carl Zakin must be leaving by the way he had entered. The bedroom door was closed, but not locked. It opened to Val's touch. Fresh air blew against his face, gun ready. He edged into the room. Something sinuous and snake-like jerked across the window as he looked out. Val put the bronze statue on the floor and grabbed out the window. His hand closed on a ladder made from thin, strong silk cord and light bamboo crosspieces not more than 6 inches wide. A ladder that could be rolled up into a small bundle, carried easily, and yet by which a man could descend and mount a sheer wall like this with no trouble. He looked up. The ladder was still swaying, jerking. He was in time to see a dark figure clambering over the edge of the roof. Leaning out, Val shot at it. Once, twice, thundering reverberations crashed on the night and echoed back from the high apartment walls nearby. He could not tell whether he had hit. The figure disappeared. A moment later, the silk and bamboo ladder was jerked up. Val caught it, held on the drag above, ceased instantly. A moment later, the ladder fell down about his hand. Val yanked it in, left it lying across the windowsill from the edge of the roof. Above, a voice spoke. "That will be you, Valentine Easton." Without answering, Val shouted from the window. "Anyone in the yard?" He was not answered on the roof. Carl Zakin laughed at him. "Good night, Easton. Next time I'll deal with you more thoroughly." "You are cornered up there," Val called. "The police are here. The house is surrounded. I'll deal with you myself in a few minutes." "An incurable optimist," Carl Zakin mocked him. "I was expecting you, Easton. I am sorry you didn't get in my way. Give my regards to Greg in Washington." And the Black Doctor was gone. Val hauled the ingenious ladder into the room, slammed the window down, locked it, and hurried downstairs. There was no attic to the house. A man could not leave the roof without a ladder. Zakin's ladder was locked inside. Those were the facts, but Val was not sure of them. That cunning mind on the roof would not walk into a trap. Lights had been lighted on the first floor. The suffering guests had fled. From the gallery were overflowing outside. Val saw them milling on the sidewalk, wiping their eyes, choking. An ambulance stood at the curb. A police patrol car was parked behind it. Patrolmen were pushing among the guests inside the front door. A white-coated intern flashlight in one hand and black bag in the other hurried to the stairs with Adelaide Burkett. Val said to a uniformed officer, "Watch the outside of the house. The killer's up on the roof. He won't be down this way." The stalwart patrolman, ignoring a weeping woman who caught at his arm, said, "If he's on the roof, we'll go up after him, mister. You can't. He went up on a rope ladder and then cut it at the top and threw it down." "Ain't that nice?" "Then he's up there until we grab him." "I doubt it," said Val through his teeth. "He had to get up there some way before he could fasten a rope ladder, didn't he? He can come down the same way." Leaving the puzzled cop wrestling with that idea, and shoved outside an arm's length from the open gate, at the corner of the annex, he found the detective who had been standing guard at the front steps. "Why the devil aren't you in the rear?" Val snapped at him again, without thinking. He used the wrong tone. The man took quick offense. "What business is it of yours?" he retorted ill-naturedly. "I've been back there. My partner's dead, and another one has the back of his head caved in. No one else in the yard? No way to get out of it over that high wall. I am waiting to collar anyone who tries to come out this way." Vail pocketed the automatic which he had carried in his hand from the third floor. "All right," he said. "Come on back with me." "Nix," the detective refused sourly. "I am watching this gate until things clear up some." Val went alone. The backyard was as he had left it, quiet, still, isolated from the teeming city. The dead body still lay on the flagstone walk. The brick wall surrounding the yard was all of 15 feet high. A quick circuit of it showed no way a man could have climbed it. The house remained dark, but the back door was open. He heard low, excited voices there, and then the harsher tones of authority. "This, the backyard, anyone coming this way?" Val went toward the rear steps, made his presence known, said to the patrolman who emerged from the house, "Watch the roof." The patrolman moved out into the yard, looked up, grunted. "If there is a man up there, he's still there. No way he can get down. Looks that way, Val agreed. If he does try it, shoot first and talk later, he'll do the same. Leaving the officer there, Val went out front. 5. The Mask of Kuan Ti. The sidewalk was jammed with guests and a curious crowd. More police arrived. No man could leave that roof without discovery. The ambulance drove off with a warning twirl of the siren. A second siren swept along Fifth Avenue and swerved into the curb. It was a hook and ladder truck from the fire department. An extension ladder was placed against the front of the annex. A detective and 2 patrolmen went up the ladder with guns ready in their hands. Flashlight beams glinted, wavered on the annex roof. A fireman took a scaling ladder up. They were on the house roof a few minutes later. Bale pushed through the crowd on the sidewalk to the front steps. He was starting into the house when a hand caught his arm. It was Bradshaw, Deputy Police Commissioner, Val said. Come inside, I want to talk to you. And there Val hastily outlined what had happened. Candles were still burning in the big octagonal hall. Bradshaw studied Val shrewdly in their wan, flickering light. You know who the thief was? Yes. Carl Aiken, the man I've been after for the past week. Hell, Bradshaw exclaimed, startled. He's not a man to make a play like this. Bradshaw fingered his trim black mustache, frowning. How the hell did he get up the roof if all he had was a rope ladder? You tell me, Val suggested. Bradshaw snorted. We'll sweat it out of him when they get him. I doubt, said Val slowly. If they get him. I've got a hunch he's not up there on the roof now. The lights flashed on suddenly. A helmeted and rain-coated fireman carrying an electric lantern tramped out of the rear regions of the house. He recognized Bradshaw, nodded the light in greeting, and said, Somebody snatched a fuse out of the fuse box down in the cellar. Val grinned wryly at Bradshaw. A little more mystery for you. A plainclothesman bustled in, saw Bradshaw, came to him. No one up on the roof, he stated. What? Bradshaw exploded. Nope. The boys have been all over it with their lights. It's clean. Search the house, Bradshaw snapped. Every part of it. Fast had the business moved, that the confusion had not quieted yet. The guests were still milling around in bewilderment. Through them came Adelaide Burkett. She was wiping her eyes as Val went to meet her, followed by Bradshaw. How is your brother? Said Val. The doctor says he will probably be all right. The wound isn't as bad as it looked at first sight. Card evidently fell against something and was knocked unconscious. I thought I had better stay here. What did you find in the gallery? She made a wry face. She was hard hit, but trying not to show it. He got one of the most valuable things we have, she said simply. What? Cart managed, by a marvelous piece of luck and the expenditure of a staggering sum, to bring out of China this time a thing so valuable, so revered by millions, that it would undoubtedly have been taken from us by the Chinese government had anyone suspected we had it. The jade death mask of the Emperor Qiang Shi. She looked at Val and Bradshaw as if expecting some startling reaction, and when they both only looked blank and questioning, she explained patiently. Qiang Shi was the greatest emperor of the Tang dynasty, the mightiest China has ever known. Under it, the Chinese Empire reached its highest state of prosperity. Qiang Shi was the war emperor, following in the footsteps of Quan Ti, the war god. Objects of great value are buried in the tombs of the Chinese emperors. Qiang Shi, among other things, was buried with the jade mask of Quan Ti on his face. It has become legendary as a source of mighty deeds and power. Suppose, Bradshaw commented politely, it must be valuable. Valuable, she flashed in indignation. Priceless. In the first place, Hanyu, ancient jade or tomb jade, has an appeal all its own to the Chinese. The mask of Quan Ti was carved from a flawless block of mutton, fat jade, speckled with emerald green, the most precious jade of all. It is darker now as tomb jade becomes from contact with the body, Bradshaw asked. What's it worth today? Her eyes looked past them, through them, to far things. Rivers of blood, said Adelaide Burkitt slowly. Thousands of lives. No money could buy the death mask of Qiang Shi, unless it was purchased from a thief who was also under great obligation, as happened in this case. Qiang Shi's memory is revered by millions. His jade death mask of the war god, recovered from the tomb long ago, has become a god thing in itself. Superstition has grown up about it that someday a man will come to fill the shoes of Qiang Shi and wear the jade mask of the war god and bring back to China the glory and power of his reign. You mean, Val said shrewdly, that the mask is worshipped as a joss? Joss, she said, is the name for any of the gods to whom prayer sticks, and prayer papers are burned and prayers are said. The jade mask is like any other statue of Quan Ti, the war god, only ranking far above mere statues because of its association with the Emperor Qiang Shi. It was one of the treasures of the Forbidden City. During the looting that followed the Boxer Rebellion, it disappeared. It has been lost to the world since, until Cart, who had been running down rumors of it for years, finally got it on this trip. Bradshaw looked at Val inquiringly. Will you tell me, he asked with asperity, what Zakin wants with that mask? It's no good to him. He couldn't dispose of it in this country or on the continent. Besides, queried Bradshaw, since when has Zakin taken to anything like this? According to you, he's playing for far greater stakes than larceny could bring. The mask is associated with the war god, Val said under his breath. That right, Miss Burkitt? Exactly, Mr. Easton. Millions believe the mask carries the power of Quan Ti, and if a leader turned up with the jade mask, it would depend on the man. I think, said Val slowly to Bradshaw, I understand now why Zakin came tonight for the jade mask. More than half an hour had elapsed since that first tragic moment in the backyard. Val looked at his watch, slipped it back, said to Bradshaw, I am going up to Burkitt's study. The butler let the guests into the gallery under mighty suspicious circumstances. He told me one of the maids brought orders from Burkitt to do it. It sounds fishy. How about checking it while I'm upstairs? Bradshaw agreed grimly. I'll see him. If he's holding out, he'll come through to me. In Cartier Burkitt's study, Val went at once to the scattered papers on the floor. Perhaps you'd rather look through these yourself, he suggested to Adelaide Burkitt. I want to see if any of that report is here. She shook her head. Go ahead. I am keen to know. Cart was secretive about this. I haven't the slightest idea what he was doing. Val picked up a double handful of the papers and laid them on the desk. Your brother is just the type of man we need. Most people talk too much. Val leafed rapidly through the papers. Don't know myself exactly what he was doing for the government, he admitted. But it was all to be in his report. 10 minutes later, they looked at one another. Cartier Burkitt's papers had yielded no sign of a report. Stolen? She asked helplessly. Val nodded glumly, then suddenly snapped his fingers. The wastebasket. Should have thought of it before. He lifted the small metal basket to the desk chair. Discarded paper filled it almost to the brim. Val opened the crumpled sheets, putting them on the desk. Out of the first dozen, he put 2 aside, numbered 3 and 7. They were written in bold, heavy strokes. Page 3. Most of the inland provinces, I found a strong undercurrent of dissatisfaction different from anything I have encountered in 27 years' contact with the country. Distinctly different from the old hatred of the foreigner, incoherent in most cases, unless one probes carefully and deeply. Distinctly ominous in the province of Shenxi 5, page 3. Had been stopped at that point, crumpled, thrown away. Page 7. The same condition existed, little realization of it among the Western population there. They all considered Shanghai guarded and docile as a standard, but they're a stiff-necked lot for the most part, unable or unwilling to see much beyond their own corner. From sources in Shanghai I checked further. Much money is available to influence native feeling. Heard again and again of a certain Chang Qian, whose prestige seems great among those who spoke of him. The man is not now in China, I gather, and could not discover where he is. Secret bases mentioned in the Marshall Islands, now under Caverbull. Adelaide Burkett returned the papers. Her tan, frank face was a study. I see, she said, simply. Val put them in his pocket. I wish everyone saw as well, he said briefly. Shall we go down? They were both silent as they left the study and descended to the first floor. The shadow of things apart beyond the evening's happenings lay over them. Degree of order had been restored in the house. Patrolmen and detectives were everywhere, taking names and addresses, searching, standing, watchful and ready. A word to one of the officers guided Val to the big dining room. Bradshaw was in there, facing a perspiring and distinctly uncomfortable butler, and a chic little maid now flushed, defiant, and slightly frightened underneath. It's the truth, the maid was insisting as Val entered. You can do anything you please. But I didn't know about it. I delivered the message, and that's what I am paid to do. And I'll go into court with the same story. My references are good, and I've never had any trouble before. That's right, sir, the butler seconded hastily. She came here with the best of references. Blast her references. Bradshaw grunted. Oh, hello, Easton. He turned disgustedly. This girl admits bringing the message from Burkett. She claims she was at the head of the stairs when Burkett's study door opened, and a man, one of the guests, she thought, looked out and told her Burkett wished her to tell the butler to open the gallery. The man went back in the study. She delivered the message. Jennings here opened the gallery, and that's all these two claim to know. Val eyed the flushed girl thoughtfully. What did he look like? He asked her. Why, tall and stoop-shouldered. He was in evening clothes like all the guests, sir. His face was thin and ugly. I felt queer when he looked at me. But I knew Mr. Burkett was in there, so I took the order to Jennings at once, sir. Let them go, Val said under his breath. And when Bradshaw dismissed them, and they were out of earshot, Val said, She's telling the truth. Zakin gave her that order. He came in through that upstairs window, finished with Burkett, and entered the gallery with the guests. Everything planned and carried out methodically, even to his escape. He knew what he wanted, came for it, and he got away with it. Your men can question the guests and search all night, and they won't find much else. Zakin is one of the most dangerous men in the world today. He has been a professional spy for years. More than one government has tottered because of state secrets. He has stolen. The devil! Bradshaw exclaimed. 5. Quite! And now Zakin is starting something so monstrous and incredible that if he is not stopped, he'll end the world in chaos. Bradshaw's hand hovered at his mustache. He stared. Asia, Val said, is a heap of powder waiting for the spark, and Carl Zakin, in grim conclusion, is that spark. Pugh threw up his hands. I know you people have information the public doesn't get, and I can understand the possibility of an international angle. But the Jade Mask, where does it come in? Why is he wasting his time on a small thing like that? Zakin knows what he's up to, and I think I do too. We've got to get it, Bradshaw, and get those papers stolen off Burkett's desk without delay, too, Bradshaw protested quickly. You don't want much. You've been looking for some trace of this man for a week, with all the assistance we could give you. And now you say he's got to be found in a few hours. He'll duck for cover. Naturally, Bell agreed. We'll have to smoke him out. Suppose you leave orders for fingerprints to be taken off the doors in Burkett's study and bedroom, and come along with me, Zakins, through with this house. And I think I know where he's gone, where we can pick up his trail anyway in Chinatown. Then I'll throw men into Chinatown and search every rat hole along Pell Doyers and Met Streets." Bradshaw burst out. "Then you can't go with me," Val told him flatly. "No more publicity on this, if you please. If Sakin is gone there, you'll frighten him away. He won't be expecting me. Come along if you care to, but just we two go." Bradshaw considered, and then shrugged reluctantly. "All right," he assented. "I am taking it for granted you know what we're doing, but don't forget we have the responsibility of clearing all this up." "Tea," said Val Easton grimly. "Have something a damn sight bigger to clear up. Got a gun. T'll get one from a dick. Get two. I don't want to have to go to the hotel and dig into my bag and Bradshaw. No publicity about the mask." "Right," Bradshaw agreed. Val had a brief word with Adelaide Burkay while Bradshaw was getting the weapons. She looked less grief-stricken, told him that the hospital reported her brother would recover. He had gained consciousness for a short time and was now sleeping easily. "That's great," Val said with relief. Then to her he made the same request he had of Bradshaw. "Don't give out any information about the mask," he begged. "Newspaper reporters are out there already. They'll question the guests, get to you without doubt, tell them a valuable piece was stolen from the collection, say it was jade if you must, but nothing about the history of the mask or the missing report." "Of course," she agreed, "if it will help you any." 6 Fog Night. A thick fog had descended on Chinatown. It swirled before the headlights and gray, opaque waves poured cold and damp into Bradshaw's car as it raced down the Bowery. "I haven't the slightest idea what we're running into," Val admitted. "But I know Carl Zakin. I assure you he'd like nothing better than to see me out of the way." They rolled slowly, carefully into Pell Street, through muggy soup that all but blotted out a big banner in Chinese characters swung above the street. The old iron balconies on the dingy building fronts. The few parked machines at the curbs. The lighted windows in the very street before them were barely visible. They crawled past the shop of Li Fui Shan. A light glowed dimly inside the window. Pedestrians were few. Bradshaw parked the car half a block beyond the shop and they got out. "Now what?" he demanded. "I'm hoping a young woman will be in the shop of Li Fui Shan, where she is. Zakin should be tonight. If he isn't, she'll know where he is." "Is that all?" "We've got a man down here who knows every corner of this district. Charlie Gong, born in Frisco, been on the department here in New York for 10 years. He's just the man to help on this. I can call the precinct from the nearest corner box and find out where he is." "Good idea. Go ahead, but no cordons. Intelligence has to be sub rosa, and a whole squad out tonight couldn't escape notice. Carl Zakin isn't worried about the police. He's proven that. He's slippery. And the only way we can nab him is by being just twice as slippery." "Slippery it is then," Bradshaw agreed, as they came into Doyers Street and the police box. Bradshaw unlocked it with his key, rang in, said into the mouthpiece, "Commissioner Bradshaw talking." "Hello. That you, Garrity? Where is Charlie Gong?" "Gone to Lee Fat's restaurant. Call Lee Fat's Garrity. And tell Charlie Gong to hustle over here to the box." "No, nothing wrong. Just need him, and I want him quick." Bradshaw hung up, closed the box. "Charlie'll be here in a few minutes," he said. "Nice boy. Smart, and knows how to keep his mouth shut. You can tell him anything and not be afraid it'll leak all over this district." They waited less than 5 minutes near the call box. A short, slender figure, with top coat collar turned up and slouch hat brim turned down, materialized suddenly out of the fog. Grinning, he shook hands with Bradshaw. "Regret 10,000 times keeping Honorable Commissioner waiting," Charlie Gong said in smiling apology. "My unworthy head bows low in shame, while pride swells me near to burst at this chance to shake one commissioner's honorable hand." "Still the little humorist, I see," Bradshaw chuckled. "He speaks better English than either of us, Easton, and with a Harvard accent when he forgets. I can never quite forgive him that. Charlie, this is Mr. Easton. We've got a bit of delicate work on tonight. Want your help and all the smart thinking you can give, and it may be dangerous. Got your gun? Delighted, Mr. Easton, Charlie Gong said, shaking hands. I am at your service, gentlemen, and I always go armed at night. Commissioner, too many in this district resent my being a member of the police and my humble efforts on behalf of the law. My tongue had made it plain that they cannot take up quarrels incurred while working in my job. That rather makes an open season for me. You see, I shall probably get a knife in the back one of these days, he finished quite cheerfully. Charlie Gong came only about to Val's shoulder. He had the usual high cheekbones, the slant eyes, the general conformation of his Canton countrymen from the south of China. His lips were full, his nose broad, his eyebrows black and heavy beneath the downturned hat brim. But his eyes, twinkling, direct and shrewd, coupled with a distinct firmness of his mouth and chin, marked him as a man to be depended on. There's been robbery and murder uptown, Charlie, Bradshaw stated. Mr. Easton has reason to believe the man who did it can be found here in Chinatown, or at least some trace of him. It's vitally important we get him tonight if possible, and there must be no publicity if we can help it. Not a word to anyone. I understand, Charlie Gong nodded. Who is this man, and what reason have you for believing he may be found in Chinatown? The name is Zakin, Val said. Carl Zakin, sometimes known as the Black Doctor. No recognition appeared on Charlie Gong's face. I am sorry, gentlemen. If he's here, I have not heard of him. Will you describe him? Val did so. No, said Charlie Gong. I don't believe I'd seen him. Have you heard of a man called Chang Chien? Val asked quickly and bluntly, and he watched the other's face closely. No expression appeared on Charlie Gong's face. He returned Val's gaze unblinkingly, gravely. I have heard of Chang Chien, Mr. Easton. Just a word here and there. Those who speak of him do so furtively. He is not a topic of public conversation. What he is, or who he is, I am unable to tell you. I gather that he has power and wealth, that those who mention him are afraid of him. But if a man by that name is here in Chinatown, I don't know it. Do you know anything about a man named Li Fuishan who owns the shop back there along Pell Street? Val asked. Then Charlie Gong's face lighted up. Li Fuishan, eh? Can do, Mr. Easton. I know Li well. He's been here in Chinatown for over 20 years, one of our most respected merchants. He is a man who has prospered by hard work and honesty. His gifts to charity are extensive. He sits high in the councils of the Anliang Tong. I cannot speak too highly of him. Is he married? Does he have any daughters? His family is in Guangdong Province in China. Charlie Gong smiled. His sons are being educated in Canton, I believe. Like many Chinese in this country, he does not see his family for years at a time. No women at all? Val insisted. There is, I believe, a niece, Mr. Easton. She does not live with Li Fuishan, but she has been there frequently of late. I have seen her one or twice entering or leaving, and I have heard her mentioned. Things like that get around a very beautiful girl, as I recall her. I thought so. I want her. She entered Li Fuishan's shop several hours ago. If she knows she's wanted, she'll escape or hide. Have you any way of gaining access to Li Fuishan's living quarters? I'm afraid not, Charlie Gong said. Without a search warrant, I couldn't go back. And if Li Fuishan is hiding someone, he would not be apt to invite me into the rear. All right, said Val. We'll go in. You watch the rear of the house. Collar anyone who tries to leave, and watch out you don't get a knife or a bullet in your ribs. As the three of them talked, they had moved over in the shelter of the nearest doorway. Now as they stood there, one of the infrequent pedestrians came along the sidewalk, materializing out of the fog. His head turned, staring. As he came abreast, Val saw a man of about his own size, stooped, thin-chested, with a head too big for his body. There was something about that head that caught the eye. It seemed to move hunched forward like a disembodied member detached from the slighter body beneath. It had a prognathous jaw, a wide, cruel slit of a mouth, a great hooked nose, and staring, burning eyes. Certainly one would not be apt to forget it in a long time. Recognition glinted in those burning eyes. A dry, harsh voice threw out, "Hello, Gong," and the furtive figure went on without slackening its pace, vanishing in the swirling fog as suddenly as it had appeared. "Sweet-looking customer," Bradshaw commented. "Who is he, Charlie?" Charlie Gong, who had not answered the other's greeting, said impassively, "That is Emile, the devil. I heard of him." "The honorable devil would be ashamed of his company," said Charlie Gong blandly. "Emile is a dangerous man. I've had my qualms about crossing him." "Creepy fellow," said Val. "Who is he? What's his last name?" "Just Emile." "That is all anyone knows him by, we are certain. He is a leader in one of the biggest dope rings, with ramifications in England and on the continent. But so far, none of his activities here in Chinatown has given us proof of that." "He lived," said Charlie Gong, "in China for some time and all over the East. I believe he speaks the Mandarin dialect of the North and has a fair smattering of Cantonese. Ostensibly he is an importer, and I've never been able to prove anything else. Queer," continued Charlie Gong reflectively, "that he should be walking on a night like this. He has a $10,000 car if he chooses to ride in it." "Look into that some other time," Bradshaw suggested. "Right now we have other business. Give me 10 minutes to get behind Lafuishan's building commissioner, and then deal with the venerable Li as you see fit." Pell Street was oddly quiet, deserted. But in the shop of Li Fuishan there was still a light. The door was locked. "Hell," said Bradshaw, "but we're going in." He knocked. Curtains parted at the back of the shop, and an elderly man shuffled to the door as Bradshaw knocked again. He peered through the glass at them, and then unlocked the door with obvious reluctance. As Bradshaw gestured looking out, he said severely, "My shop closed till tomorrow, gentlemen." "You come back then. We're in a hurry," said Bradshaw. "We won't be here tomorrow, are you?" "Li Fuishan," and Bradshaw pushed inside as he asked that. His abrupt entrance was met with composure. "I am Li Fuishan," the old man said with dignity. "What you want, gentlemen?" With Charlie Gong's words still fresh in his mind. And Li Fuishan the man there before him. Val found it hard to believe that there could be anything wrong in this modest shop. Li was indeed a venerable man. His scanty hair was snow white. Whatever garb he wore during the business day had been set aside for the dignified comfort of a long black silk coat, swathing silk trousers, and thick-soled felt slippers. An old man, but not wrinkled, emaciated, as so many of his countrymen became. Li Fuishan's face was plump, kindly, dignified. One could visualize him smiling often, always courteous. He was courteous now. As he bent his head after Bradshaw, said, "We'd like to look at some pottery." "You catchy," said Li Fuishan, dropping into pidgin English. "I give you light." He gave them the freedom of his shop with a gesture and padded leisurely 3 steps to a light cord hanging from the ceiling. The shop was filled with a heterogeneous collection of Chinese craftsmanship, pottery, bronzes, rugs, silks, porcelainware, statuary, and trinkets of all kinds. Some of the stuff was good, and some obviously bad for the tourist trade. Li shuffled behind one of the cases and began to take down samples of pottery from the wall shelves. He ranged 6 on the case and looked at them inquiringly. Bradshaw examined them with a show of interest. Val looked about listening. The smell of the Orient was strong in here. Musk, sandalwood, incense. The shop was very quiet. The faint roar of the elevated over on the Bowery sounded died away. Then fainter, still, far off. A fog whistle on the river moaned rhythmically. Beyond the heavy tapestry curtains at the back of the shop, no sound was audible. If anyone was in there, they were keeping very quiet. Lai Fuishan waited behind the counter like an impassive Buddha. "Show me some more," Bradshaw requested. "I am afraid these aren't suitable." Lai inclined his head and turned back to the shelves. "Yuanchi Numa, one vase, eh?" he inquired over his shoulder. "To suppose so," Bradshaw grunted. Then he turned his head and shot a look of inquiry at Val, a slightly baffled look as if he were beginning to be convinced that this was wasted time. Val himself was wondering if he had not so plainly seen that veiled woman in the black fur coat. Enter here, he would have given this Li Fuishan a clean bill of health. But she had come in here, she was known to Charlie Gong, if only by hearsay. The Fuishan, for all his kindly venerable appearance, traced directly to Carl Zaken, the Black Doctor. And where Carl Zaken's influence reached, there was danger. Thinking so, Val swung about suddenly and caught the barest flutter of the tapestry curtains at the back of the room. Someone was standing behind them looking into the shop, and suddenly the quiet and peace took on the ominous look of watchful waiting. Li Fuishan's kindly Buddha-like face became a mask, hiding breathless tension. Val went to the counter, picked up one of the vases, and examined it. He caught the old man behind the counter sliding an imperceptible glance toward the back. Old Lai knew there was someone back there. "Let's go back there," Val said casually. "Maybe I can find something else that will do." He idled slowly back along the counter, inspecting the contents within. Lai watched him for a moment and then hurried back. "You likey see nice silk?" he questioned. "You come up front, I show." The curtains had not moved again. "All right, get out your silk," Val said, and as Lai started back toward the front, Val turned away from the counter and made a quick jump for the curtains. He was certain that he heard a quick scurry of movement beyond and the soft click of a latch, but when he jerked the curtains back he found only a small alcove, backed by a door, closed now. Lai Fuishan's indignant cry filled the shop. "What you do? You come away." 7. Taishan Val tried the door. It did not open, bolted inside apparently. He drew back 2 steps and lunged at it. The bolt was not strong, nor the door either. It shivered, cracked, gave. Val drew back and struck it again. Li Fuishan's rising crescendo of indignant cries broke off suddenly. Bradshaw's cold voice said, "Steady, old-timer. We're from police headquarters. Get violent, and I'll call the wagon." And Val struck the door a 3rd time, driving it in with a rending of screws from wood. He staggered through the open doorway, peering intently. There was a hall beyond, a dark hall, seemingly deserted. But no, the light striking past him through the doorway showed a thick-set, black-shirted Chinese crouched against the wall. He sprang out as Val saw him, crouched in the middle of the hall, a short knife glinting in his hand. Still crouching, he moved a step forward, holding the knife ready for a slashing-up stroke, and somewhere in the darkness at the back feet pattered hastily. A door closed furtively. In the shop, Li Fuishan expostulated shrilly. "What for you bleak in my house this way?" And Bradshaw said gruffly, "Shut up or I'll crown you. What is it, Easton?" Val dragged his automatic from his coat pocket. And, as if realizing quick action was the only thing to meet a gun, the crouching figure before uncoiled in a swift rush, slashing up with the knife. Val stepped back, whirling aside before the silent savagery of that rush. The gleaming blade struck a button on his coat, slid off, and ripped through the cloth, slashing deep at an angle. He felt the cold slither of it clear through to the skin as he struck the wall, and then, as the knife flashed out from under his upraised arm for another stroke, Val chopped down hard with the gun barrel. The crunch of steel against bone was the loudest thing about that brief, silent scuffle. The stocky Chinese lurched over against the side of the passage, sank to his knees, crumpled in a limp little heap. Val witnessed this with relief, He wanted no gunfire, no killing if it could possibly be avoided. For the plain facts were, he and Bradshaw were in this building without a search warrant. A shooting might make it awkward. Bradshaw yanked the curtains clear back and snapped through the alcove. "Everything all right?" "So far," said Val shortly. "I had to slug this fellow, but he'll come out of it. Nasty beggar, he slid that knife along my ribs. Would have put it in my stomach if I hadn't jumped quick. Watch him, and the old man Bradshaw. I think someone we want is back here. We were being watched from behind the curtain when I made a jump for it." "Go ahead," said Bradshaw. "I'll back you up." "When they start drawing knives, rough 'em." Val went back along the hall into thickening blackness. Doors opened to right and left. It was a squalid, grimy hall. The worn floor squeaked miserably underfoot. A staircase, starting from the back of the hall, slanted to black, silent regions above. A door on the left showed light underneath, and through the keyhole Val opened it, blinked with amazement. He looked from the sordid hall into beauty, richness, and excellent taste. The furniture was carved hardwood, dark, polished, intricately inlaid with mother-of-pearl. Heavy silk covered the windows, gold-embroidered tapestries hung on the walls. Several beautifully carved and painted screens cut off corners of the room. It was empty now, but it had been occupied short moments before blue hazy smoke drifted before a silk-shaded floor lamp. A hammered brass ashtray, on a small red lacquered table, held several cigarette ends, and one still sent up a faint curl of smoke. Val stepped in swiftly, gun ready in his hand. He made a circuit of the room, looking behind the screens. They hid no one. There was a door in each end of the room, but before he could try either, a commotion in the hall drew him quickly. There was enough light in the hall now to see a strange and welcome sight. Charlie Gong, short and placid, was shepherding two figures in from the back. A man and a woman. Charlie saw him and panted, "Here is two who came flying out. I don't think there were any more." The man was Emile, that grotesque-faced figure who had passed furtively in the fog. And the woman, in all the world there could be only one such pale, soft, beautiful face, framed in jet-black hair like an alabaster cameo. Her mouth was a vivid red as the color of an East Indian flame tree, and her strange, striking beauty had all the lure of a lotus flower in full bloom. Bradshaw had come into the hall bringing the now uneasy Li Fui Shan. He whistled softly between his teeth. "Some catch, Charlie. What have we here?" Emile hunched there, his wide-slit mouth snarling. His big head swayed about as he looked at them. "I'll make somebody sweat for this," he threatened furiously. "When a citizen can't call on friends without a bunch of cops surrounding the house and crashing in this way, it's time to go high up about it. I'll have Gong's shield before I am through." "Who are you two?" he barked at Val and Bradshaw. Charlie Gong clucked regretfully and succeeded in looking very much like a mischievous youngster. "Honorable Emile Makey run flum doa like a dragon chop his pants seat so me catch him and ask how come." "Lay off that pigeon talk," Emile snarled malevolently. "I know you can speak as well as I can," Charlie Gong chuckled. "Better, old chap," he agreed. "But I'll wager 5-1 I can't get out of a house half as fast as you left this one. You went down those steps as if you had greased shoes." Val faced the girl. She was furious, scornful. But even in anger her voice was oddly musical, vibrant. You do this to me, Val Easton? After Rieko." She broke off, bit her lip. Bradshaw stared. "You know her?" he asked Val in astonishment. "This," said Val, "is the lovely Tai Shan, sister of Chang Chien Tai Shan. May I present Deputy Commissioner Bradshaw?" She ignored Bradshaw. "I'm not interested in the police," she said indifferently, and again her voice was clear and musical in that dim, dark hall. "I haven't thanked you for that warning tonight, Tai Shan. You had me fooled for a time, that Russian accent. I'm still wondering how you knew where to find me on Fifth Avenue. I wouldn't let a finger to save you from anything, said Taishan scornfully. You are not worth it. But if I wanted to know where to find you, I would have someone sit in a hotel room next to yours and listen to your talk. We live and learn, Val sighed. I should have been watching for that. What do you want with me? Taishan demanded. Where is Carl Zakin? Ah, so. Her anger left suddenly. She smiled faintly, and in that dim, sordid hall, she was like a figure in some lovely old Chinese print. Her exotic beauty was aflame, heightened, if anything, by the grotesque ugliness of the snarling Emil. You want Carl Zakin? Taishan mocked. Why come to me, Val Easton? We might search the place, Val mused, watching her. Taishan shrugged indifferently. Li Fuishan had been standing beside Bradshaw in dignified silence. He burst into shrill protests. This my place. You no search without paper. Don't waste your breath, Bradshaw, counseled the old man curtly. We're in now, and we'll do what we blasted please. And if you are hiding this Zakin, you are in for a rough time. Taishan melted suddenly. He can tell you nothing, she said to Bradshaw. No one you want is in this house, I know. I've been here all evening. I pledge you my word. Li Fuishan is merely an old friend who has been repaying an obligation 2 centuries old by giving me a roof when I need it. Don't bother him. His hospitality has been abused enough tonight. Let me get my coat and hat. Take me out of here. I will talk to you some other place. Li Fuishan's face softened. He made a slight graceful bow. My daughter, he said, this humble house is yours. Charlie Gong spoke to him in Chinese. Fuishan answered. Charlie said to Val and Bradshaw, this is not his niece. There is a blood debt between the families dating back 8 generations. She is more than a niece to him. She is his blood, his daughter. Such things are done among my people, he assures me. There is no one else in the house. I believe him. Take us out of here, Taishan insisted. To the police station, if you will. I will talk to you there, you see. And her smile at Val was suddenly dazzling. I am a tractable prisoner. Val studied her a moment and smiled thinly. Too tractable, Taishan, too very tractable. You are beautiful, you are lovely, and you've got the heart of a tiger back of it. But there is no hurry. Let us first speak about this Emil, who, I understand, is in the dope game. What business has he with you, Taishan? I've thought hard things about you, and I've fought you, but I always supposed you were clean. I've admired you. I never thought you were mixed up with dope. A slow red flush crept up to her high cheekbones. Dope, Taishan repeated, and her musical voice was suddenly off-key, harsh. This man a seller of drugs? Yes. Emil raised a hand whose fingers were short, thick, and rubbed his bulging jaw. He was in no wise disturbed. His wide slit of a mouth grinned at them. Prove it, said Emil comfortably. Just try to prove it. He acted like a man who had been accused often before, and rested secure in the knowledge that he could not be reached. Taishan's dark eyes rested on him in scrutiny. Then it is true, she said in a dull, metallic voice. Emil shrugged. I told him to prove it. My private life has nothing to do with this. I didn't come talking dope to you, young woman. Forget it. And Val was suddenly sure that this lovely Taishan had had no inkling of her visitor's profession. Yet that was no help to the mystery of Emil's presence here. With her, Emil had come alone, afoot, when he might have ridden in his expensive car. He had come late and clandestinely, and both of them, at knowledge that the police were in the front shop, had thought of nothing but escape. It might be better, Val said to her, to tell what his business is here. She bent her head thoughtfully, looked disturbed, seemed to weaken. I will. She nodded. Take me to the police station, Val Easton. I'll get my coat. She wore a black dress, tight-fitting, sheathing her slender figure closely. She was lovely, exotic, touching in her surrender. But Val said to her cynically, "You should be an actress, Tai-Shan. Before we leave here, I am going to find out why you are so anxious to go to the police station, to get away." And the words had hardly left his mouth when a telephone rang sharply in the room behind him. Tai-Shan started. Her head came up. It struck Val then that she had been listening for something ever since Charlie Gong had brought her back into the hall. He grinned as the telephone rang again and Tai-Shan offered hastily, "I'll answer it." "You'll stay right here," Val told her gently. "Charlie Gong will answer it. It may be someone who speaks Chinese." Her meek submission vanished in a breath. "You have no right to take that telephone call," she burst out angrily. "We are entitled to some privacy. You are getting all you are entitled to, Tai-Shan. And if it's an important message, you shall hear all about it." Charlie Gong was already in the room. They could hear him answering the call in English, which shifted to Chinese a moment later. Tai-Shan was pale, tense. Her little fist clenched at her side. She was straining to hear. The grotesque Emile was standing taut, also listening. In contrast, Le Fui-Shan seemed little interested in who answered the telephone. Charlie Gong spoke in the sing-song cadences of his native tongue, listened, spoke again, and a few seconds later hung up and returned to the hall. He glanced at a wristwatch. "It is now 17 minutes after 11, Charlie Gong said. At 5 minutes to 12, an automobile will call for Tai-Shan and her friend. Everything, I am informed over the telephone, is all right. And she is not to fail to bring the foreign devil." Tai-Shan bit her lip. Her eyes were blazing. But she said nothing. Emile looked uneasy. His burning eyes went from Charlie Gong to Bradshaw to Val, as if trying to read their minds. "Who was it, Val?" asked the little Chinese detective. Charlie Gong shrugged. "I don't know. I was afraid to ask questions. I merely said that the high-born lady was busy. It was evidently taken for granted that since I was here in the venerable Li Fui-Shan's home, I spoke with authority." "I should not be surprised," said Charlie Gong, "if I was not mistaken for that pig lying on the floor inside the door, who is stirring now, by the way. I will get him." Bradshaw smoothed the end of his small black mustache and smiled with satisfaction. "If there is a car coming for these two, we'll grab it, Easton. It should give us something to work on." Val had been standing, frowning to himself. The frown passed as suddenly as it had come. He grinned. The car was going to take them somewhere. I'll slip into Emile's coat and hat and take his place. "But the woman—" Bradshaw objected. "You can't get by with it with this girl." "No," Val agreed, "but I know one who can take her place if she is still in town. I haven't seen her for a couple of days. Just a minute while I telephone." The telephone was on a lacquered stand in the corner of the big room he had searched. The directory was underneath. He leafed through it, found a number, gave it. It was answered almost at once. He spoke rapidly, finished, "Hurry up, there is no time to lose." And back in the hall to Bradshaw, Val said, "She's coming. Nancy Fraser, who's worked with me a lot. She's the one woman in the country who could go through with this. I hate to drag her into it, but I can't pass up this chance." Tai-Shan looked suddenly like an enraged cat, a beautiful cat, but dangerous. Her hand flicked out without warning inside the bodice of her dress, came out with a tiny gleaming blade. Val's hand shot to her wrist. He had the knife, had her subdued a moment later. "I was looking for something like this," he said reproachfully. "It's no use. We're going. Take it sporting." "Go then," said Tai-Shan breathlessly. "Go with my blessings, Val Easton, and remember, my blessings." She began to laugh. "Overwrought," said Val to Bradshaw. "She'll have to be handled carefully. I suggest you get several plainclothesmen here to watch these people. No use taking them to the station house. I am sure Le Fui-Shan would rather have it that way. The old man nodded in silent agreement. "I'll do that," said Bradshaw briskly, "and Charlie and I will tail you in another car." "Good, but you'll have to work fast." Bradshaw used the telephone hurriedly. And in an incredibly short time, 3 plainclothesmen entered the shop. Bradshaw gave them directions. They took Tai Shan, the grotesque Emile, and the brownie native who had stood guard in the hall. Took them into the big lighted room, handcuffed the man, put Tai Shan in a chair, firmly despite her indignation. Then Nancy Fraser came into the shop breathlessly, her cheeks pink from cold and haste. Nancy Fraser, whose daring and ingenuity was known all through the intelligence. In spite of that, she stood there inside the door, softly feminine, a little beauty with fine, clean-cut features, sun-tanned, chin firm, and mouth wide and corked humorously at the corners. Val thought again with admiration that she had the deepest and bluest eyes he had ever seen, and her platinum hair cut short and waved close to her head was as beautiful as ever when she stripped off her little felt hat and smiled at him. "Here I am, Val, what's the bad news?" Swiftly, as they went back into the hall, he gave it to her. "Exciting," said Nancy gaily. "I've been famishing for something like this." She met Bradshaw and Charlie Gong composedly. "Are you sure it's all right to take her, Easton?" Bradshaw queried doubtfully. "Have to," said Val. "She understands. It's part of the game. I'd rather have her than most men. I'll get Tai Shan's coat and hat, Nancy. They'll be a little big, but I guess you can manage them." In a few moments more, they were both ready, Val in Emile's coat and hat, Nancy in Tai Shan's. "Got your gun?" Val asked. "Never go out without it at night," said Nancy airily. "We girls are fragile, you know." Bradshaw and Charlie Gong left the shop for the police car parked down the street. Val and Nancy waited in the front. The hands of Val's watch crept toward 12, and suddenly there was a soft, purring motor outside, headlights gleaming dimly through the fog. A horn blew once. "Here we go," said Val. "Chine up and keep your hand on your gun." Coat collars turned up, hats shading their faces as much as possible. They left the shop of Li Fuishan and walked out into the damp, swirling fog. 8 house of hooded men limousine stood at the curb, big, black, powerful, fast. 2 figures were in the front seat, and as Val and Nancy came out of the shop of Li Fuishan, one of the men leaped out, opened the rear door, and stood stiffly at attention. He was a short, slender Oriental, wearing a chauffeur's uniform. As Nancy came abreast of him, he said something to her in rapid sing-song Chinese, finishing his speech with a rising interrogation. Val stiffened. His hand in his coat pocket clutched tight on the automatic. Was their masquerade to be penetrated at the very start of this mysterious journey? But Nancy acted quickly. She always did in moments of stress. Her little gloved hand came up in a careless gesture of assent. She stepped into the limousine without speaking. It was evidently enough when Val sank into the deep, luxurious seat beside her. The door closed, the fellow entered the front, and the driver pulled away from the curb at once. Val reached out and touched Nancy's hand. He had to grope to find it, for the rear inside windows were curtained, and there was even a curtain lowered behind the 2 men in the front seat. They were in complete blackness, unable to see where they were going. "Emile was slated for a blind ride," Nancy said under her breath. "But I am not Emile, and you are not Tai Shan to keep an eye on him. We'll cheat a little." Val lifted the curtain at his side and looked out. They were rolling swiftly out of the fog-filled tangle of Chinatown. They passed under the forest of elevated pillars, crisscrossing Chatham Square, rolled along Division Street, under the elevated and turned north with it. In a few minutes they were on First Avenue, speeding north. They crossed the Harlem River on the Willis Avenue Bridge, turned on the Westchester Road. The fog thinned out, but as they neared Westchester, it began to thicken again. The limousine rolled faster toward its mysterious destination. Nancy peered out for some moments. "I wonder where we're going," she whispered. Val had sketched to her the evening's happenings in a low tone. He said now, "I wish I knew." I don't like it. I had no idea we were going so far out." He lifted the rear curtain, looked behind. The headlights of several cars were visible back there somewhere were Bradshaw and Charlie Gong. "At least," said Val, "Bradshaw and Charlie Gong are an ace in the hole." "Makes me feel better," Nancy confessed. "I am not afraid, but Carl Zakin is a horrible person. I can't forget him as he was in Washington." They turned off the avenue. Val lost track of the streets and directions there. He was in unfamiliar territory, and the still thickening fog was no help. Nancy lifted the rear curtain, looked back. "I don't see anyone following us, Val." In the swirling mist behind, no car was in evidence. Val tapped a cigarette on the back of his hand and lit it. "We're in for it now," he said slowly. "We're on our own." "I've been that way before," Nancy said philosophically. But her voice had a slight tremble, and suddenly they were there several minutes. There had been no streetlights, no sign of houses, and the wheels had left the pavement. The limousine made a sharp turn. Looking out, they could see bare, ghost-like tree trunks looming eerily through the fog. The car stopped. The motor died. The man who had let them into the car opened the door, and the cold night air swept into their faces as they got out. Fresh air, tangy with the salt and fish smell of the open sea. The hoarse blast of a fog whistle vibrated through the night, at no great distance away. The car door closed. The little Chinese man spoke again in his native tongue to Nancy, and again she did not reply. There was not even light now to gesture. They stood in blackness, complete and abysmal, except for the dim cowl lights. Fog smothered before their glow reached the front bumper. But again luck saved them. A powerful flashlight in the hands of the saffron-skinned footman glowed out before them and swept ahead, piercing the fog. It shone on steps of stone and piercing on beyond, brought up against a house wall covered thickly with ivy. He picked out a shuttered window, stark forbidding. And then the footman walked up the stone steps, keeping the light down so they could see as they followed. There was nothing else to do but follow where they were. What this place was, what was expected of them, was mystery. Dark. Sinister. They mounted 5 steps, Val counted them, and crossed the porch to a boarded door. The flashlight showed it clearly. Dark weathered boards guarding a deserted house against intruders. And the house seemed deserted. Their steps scraped loud, harsh. There were no sounds, no lights, no signs of life. And yet, when stopping before those weathered boards, their guide said in a voice that sounded startling loud, "Hola!" The weathered storm door swung out silently on oiled hinges. A second door of heavy bolted plank swung open inside it, and beyond, in a high-ceilinged reception hall, a faint red glow streamed out to meet them. Their guide stepped back as a second figure materialized in that dim, ghastly glow, bowing, welcome. This was another Chinese, bland, inscrutable, wearing black trousers and silk jacket. He bowed a second time as they entered. The dim red light came from an inverted globe, high up against the ceiling. It was so faint that what small part of their faces was visible could hardly be seen. The doors were closed behind them. The second man bowed a third time and padded ahead of them on noiseless felt soles. He stopped at a table against the side wall, picked up a piece of black cloth and said something to Nancy in Chinese at the same time moving behind her for her coat. Val watched, slit-eyed, his hand on the gun in his pocket. Nancy shook her head. Her wish seemed to carry weight. Muttering a sing-song something, the fellow lifted his hands and brought the black cloth down over her head. Nancy's hand was in her coat pocket also, and for a moment Val thought she was going to step from under the cloth and bring her gun out. Then he saw with a foolish surge of relief that a black mask with eye holes and a place to breathe had been placed over Nancy's head. A second mask was handed him from the table. Val slipped it on, pushing his hat off as it went on, so that at no moment was his face entirely visible. He too refused the offer to take off his coat. The hood felt close and warm about his face. Through the eye holes he could see Nancy, grotesque and rather horrible in the ghastly red glow. But for all the eeriness of this little bit of stage play, there was relief too. Their faces were hidden. The yellow-skinned attendant bowed, walked noiselessly to the rear of the hall and opened a door going through ahead of them. They were taken to the left along a second hall, through profound quiet they came to a door, their guide knocked. It was opened. Incense, thick, heavy, cloying, rolled out to meet them. And behind his mask, Val almost uttered an exclamation. A great hall-like room opened before them. Here was Asia, mysterious, inscrutable, beautiful. The high ceiling was vaulted, braced by great carved timbers. And from those timbers hung silken lanterns, their gay colors dimly visible. A dais at the far end of the room was backed by a marvelous tapestry covering half the wall. One single throne-like chair rested on the dais, and in each corner of the dais a bundle of joss sticks in brass containers sent up thin, wavering spirals of smoke. Nancy's fingers dug into Val's arm again as the scene burst on them, and it was not the room, but the 200 figures in it that were so startling. Figures masked like themselves in black, some seated on the chairs against the wall, some standing and moving slowly about. A very few were engaged in conversation, the most of them were sitting silently. It was a strange, uncanny scene. The eye holes in those loose enveloping hoods gave the impression of life without emotion, through the eerie red glow of the lanterns. Such voices as were speaking were low, muffled. They were all men. All but Nancy. Further than that, one could see nothing. What manner of men they were, what nationality, what they were doing here was all a mystery. Their guide had closed the door behind them, leaving them on their own. Nancy spoke from behind her mask in a muffled whisper. "Val, what is this?" "Your guess is as good as mine," Val husked back. Black shrouded heads turned, stared at them as they entered. Some turned away after a moment. Others continued watching them. The thick, cloying atmosphere of the room, for all its silence, was electric, with an undercurrent of tension. No one came forward to greet them. No one spoke to them. And after a moment Val sensed that the gathered company had no cohesion. Each man was apart from the others. No man could tell what lay behind the shrouding hood next to him. Val Easton had been many places in a somewhat hectic career, but never had he been a part of anything like this. He kept in mind that he was Emil, a power in the big dope rings, and that besides him should be the lovely Tai Shan. It still did not make sense, and the next moment his pulses leaped. He went, tense and watchful. The crashing notes of a great gong vibrated through the room. The seated figures came to their feet abruptly, turning toward the dais behind which the gong was booming. And before the last vibrant note died away, the great gold and silver tapestry curtain parted in the middle, and Carl Zakin, the Black Doctor, stepped out on the dais. There was no applause or greeting. The Black Doctor was not masked. He still wore the evening clothes in which he had appeared at Cartier-Burkett's. The notes of the gong seemed to echo and re-echo farther and fainter into the distance, until finally they were vibrant no more. And in those long seconds, the tall, stooped figure on the dais was imperceptibly bathed in a brighter red glow, while the rest of the room grew dimmer, darker. The pale, ghastly, cadaverous face of the Black Doctor stood out in blood-red relief, until it, and only it, was a focal point for all eyes. The emanations of that silent figure reached out and dominated the room, and then, voila, you are here. His dry, grating voice reached into every corner of the room. "You are here," the Black Doctor repeated, looking slowly about. "From Europe, from China, from India, from this country. You have been called here for your reports, and they are pleasing. No man among you knows his neighbor. Your identities are safe tonight, but all of you know toward what you have been working. Your rewards will be magnificent, your power unlimited. Once in 1,000 years the current history is reversed, and one part of the world rises to master the other. That time is here. Asia, so long eclipsed by the white man, is ready for the spark. Carl Zaken paused, and his flaming, malevolent eyes stared through the blood-red halo about him. He smiled, and to Val Easton, who knew the man, it was the smile of a monster, indescribably vicious and dangerous. You will be the spark. Carl Zaken's dry, grating voice told those standing hooded figures. Tonight you will see that which will put the power into your hands, gentlemen. Carl Zaken lifted a hand, half-turned to the great silver and gold tapestry curtain at the back of the dais. Crash! The hidden gong thundered its blood-chilling reverberations through the silence of the room. The curtains parted, and a gasp ran through the room. Standing there, stiff, erect, was a great tall figure clad in a magnificent dragon robe of imperial yellow, an oriental, a member of the celestial kingdom unmistakably. A round silk hat with a yellow button on the crown topped the giant figure's head, but not that brought the gasp, not that sent Val Easton's pulses hammering and brought Nancy Fraser closer to his side. For covering the face of the figure was a life-size dull amber mask of jade. Life-size and lifelike, that jade mask, shaped in the perfect lineaments of a man that had never lived. The features of a god, stern, haughty, with a small beard cunningly carved on the chin. Is that it? Nancy whispered. That's it, Val said through his teeth. And though he had never seen a jade mask before, he knew it for what it was. The death mask of the great Emperor Qiang Shi, the mask of Quan Ti, the war god. Once beautiful mutton fat jade speckled with emerald green, it had darkened to its present colors in the tomb where for centuries it had covered the face of an emperor who had made his power felt ever most of his known world. By the 100,000s men had died in the name of Quan Ti. By the millions men would die in the name of that cold jade mask, given life and meaning by the deeds of one man 13 centuries dead. Already tonight, blood had stained that beautiful jade. The future promised rivers of it in the name of hatred, greed, and lust for power. The great golden figure in the imperial dragon robe paced sedately to the gilded, carved throne chair and seated himself, hands palm down on his knees, erect, stiff, regal. Carl Zaken's voice rang through the great vaulted room. Gentlemen, the death mask of the great emperor, Qiang Shi, the god mask of the war god Quan Ti, a jest that will make its wearer infallible. Gentlemen, Chang Qian, the war leader who will inflame all China, will lead the yellow race as conquerors of the world. With this mask, he cannot fail. The great gong crashed out about them once more, and Chang Qian sat there, stiff, immovable, hands on his knees, and the god mask staring at them without expression, as it had stared for 13 centuries. And the golden robe on that golden figure seemed to take on some of the blood tinge of the ghastly light which drenched it from above. It was high drama, cunningly staged, and yet Val Easton's palm was damp about the handle of his gun as he witnessed it from among those black-hooded figures. For there was menace here too, menace, danger, and death, for Nancy Fraser and himself, and for scores of thousands of unsuspecting people who tonight were sleeping peacefully in well-sheltered homes. Here all about them in the great room was something so vicious and threatening to the peace of mankind that it must be stamped out quickly, as one would destroy a venomous snake. And Val realized with a sickening feeling of helplessness that he could do nothing against this mad man who desired to rule a world. His own life, Nancy Fraser's life, hung by threads, the thickness of the threads forming the black cloth over their faces. If they were discovered, it meant the end. Something of that must have been running through Nancy's mind also, for she crept close to Val. He could feel her arm rigid against his. Silently he berated himself for drawing her into a thing like this. And his eyes riveted on that gilded throne chair, for Chang Qian spoke from behind the jade mask. Go back and whisper what you have seen. Tell all your people that the spirit of the great Qiang Shi has returned again. Tell them to make ready plans of which you know nothing are maturing. A few more moves, a little patience, and we shall be masters of the world, for he who aims the bow that kills is master." The calm, clear voice speaking in perfect English had an uncanny, rhythmic, purring quality that was half hypnotizing. One felt that the mind behind it was a mighty thing, projecting out and folding the will to which it was addressed. One felt that here were depths beneath depths, and the man whose power, ruthlessness, and cunning could sway a multitude, set a world at war. Val felt it, and those motionless black hooded figures about him felt it too. They stood like statues spellbound. Chang Qian spoke again. "There is among you one whose beauty is no less than her sagacity. She is guided here tonight, a man whose power reaches into strange and vital places, a man unknown by the world, axeman who can bring disgrace and fear to those high in government circles in half a dozen countries. By his connections and his knowledge, he can help us undermine where other men would fail. A dealer in drugs, gentlemen, whose victims are his slaves. His face you shall not see until his work is done and Asia rules the world. But she who brought him here shall be known to you all." Val heard the uncanny purring voice with quick horror. Unexpected disaster had fallen on them. He sensed what was coming. Even before the great golden Chang, Qian said distinctly, "Tai Shan, my sister, come forward and show yourself." Nancy stood breathless and unmoving by Val's side. A hush of expectancy held the room. The black hooded heads turned toward them. All eyes were on Nancy, waiting, waiting. Chang Qian spoke again with a sharper note of authority. "Tai Shan, come forward. What shall I do?" Nancy's tight whisper came from beneath her mask. There was nothing she could do. Nothing if she went forward and removed that black hood. She was doomed. If she refused to obey, she was lost. The real and lovely Tai Shan would never have refused. The brief, fleeting seconds seemed endless. Carl, Zakin, on the edge of the dais, bent his head forward and stared through the blood-red glow suspiciously. A queer ripple of tension stirred the hooded figures about them. Cheng Shen's voice cracked like a lash. "Tai Shan! Val!" That was Nancy whispering her helplessness through the black cloth. "Tom, sorry," Val whispered back. And even as the words passed his lips, Chang Qian came out of the gilded throne chair in one cat-like movement. His hand lifted, pointed, his purring voice rang out from behind the mask. "Hold her, hold that man with her. My sister would never disobey my order like this. We're on our own, Nancy. Do what you can." Val threw that at her as he jerked the automatic from his coat pocket. They had no hope of escaping. Their lives at this moment were running out as fast and surely as the last grains in an hourglass. "Stand back," Val cried out to those black-hooded figures about him. Carl Zakin's harsh voice cried from the dais, "Stop him." They were dangerous, desperate men hand-picked by the Black Doctor and the Golden Chang, Qian. They closed in from every side. Val pumped the automatic twice savagely and heard Nancy's gun bark at his side. They both would die, but they would die dearly. A man staggered, fell, another lurched, but still they came in. Hands caught at him from behind. Val's next shot struck the floor as his arm was knocked down. He heard Nancy cry out, and then, struggling futilely, he was jerked back and borne to the floor. The black hood was tightened about his face, his neck. Fingers choked, the weight of many bodies crushed him against the floor, and a red haze closed in. Red, blood red, like that halo-baiting Chang Qian and the Black Doctor on the dais. And then, the blackness of death night struck into Val's eyes, bright light coming from a floor lamp somewhere to the left of him. His throat was dry, sore, painful. He felt sickish, dizzy. Then, memory of all that had happened flashed over him. The Black Doctor, Chang Qian, Nancy Fraser. He was on his back, looking up at the ceiling as the thought of Nancy cleared his head like a dash of cold water. He tried to sit up, and couldn't. He was held rigid by a strap over his throat. His wrists and ankles were strapped down tight. Rolling his eyes, Val saw that he was on some sort of table raised above the floor. He could lift his head an inch or so, turn it from side to side. He was in a small room, whose walls were hung with black silk embroidered at intervals with writhing golden dragons. With difficulty he made out a cabinet, a couch, and over against one wall a bookcase about the height of a man's head. Under the table on which Val lay suddenly sounded the shrill, hungry squeal of a rat, the rapid chattering of tiny sharp teeth. Val's heart beat faster at the sound. Alone, rats in the room. His coat was off, shirt sleeves loose. Helpless, defenseless, and rats in the room. The rat squealed again, but remained under the table, and in the minutes that followed Val heard it again and again, always directly beneath him. He puzzled for a little and then ignored it, thinking of Nancy Fraser. Where was she? What had happened to her? Movement beyond, his feet caught his eye, neck strained against the strap across his throat. He saw a bookcase across the room swing out noiselessly on hinges at one end, revealing an opening behind it. And from that opening a tall, powerful figure wearing a green mandarin coat and a round hat with a yellow button stepped into the room. He closed the bookcase, came to the table where Val lay, and looked down at him. The uncanny purring voice of the man called Chang Chien said, "I have waited for this, Valentine Easton." Chang Chien's words were without emotion, and chilling, and foreboding, for the very lack of it, without the ancient jade mask. Chang Chien was just as impressive. The shades of that golden dragon robe he had worn on the dais seemed still to linger in his golden-tinted skin. His full-lipped mouth, his stabbing slant eyes with a small sickle-shaped scar at the corner of his right eye, his smooth black hair sweeping back from his forehead as he lifted the hat for a moment, gave him the appearance of a tall yellow god. The scar drew his eye up into the slightest sardonic cast, and then he smiled, and cunning lay behind it, and ruthlessness, and cruelty. And one saw how this man had become a myth, a legend, a terror in the underworld of many lands beneath the table. The rat squeaked again and chattered its teeth. Chang Chien smiled broadly, without humor, said, "Where is my sister, Tai Shan, Valentine Easton? Where is Nancy Fraser?" Val countered huskily. His throat was swollen tight. "A beautiful girl, Miss Fraser, and spirited. She's been asking for you." "Damn you," said Val thickly. "Where is Tai Shan?" "Miss Fraser came here wearing Tai Shan's coat and hat in the car." "That should have brought Tai Shan. What have you done with her?" And a fierce joy burned through Val's veins at the sudden break of anguish he caught in Chang Chien's voice. "The man was vulnerable in one spot at least," Val said bluntly. "She's guarded. You can't help her." Chang Chien looked down at him without moving a face muscle. "I believe she is Easton. You found her at Lufuishan's?" "How?" "I don't know, but I would have heard from her by now if she were free." "Quite," Val agreed. "Suppose we talk business. Nancy Fraser, myself, Cartier Burkett's, Jade Mask, and say Carl Zakin for your sister." "You fool," Chang Chien purred. "You bargain with me." One hand with long tapering fingers came out of a coat sleeve and caught the front of Val's shirt. Calmly, methodically, Chang Chien ripped the cloth away until Val lay on the table bare from the waist up. "You fool," said Chang Chien again. "Once before you crossed my path and got away. You were a dead man when you entered this house, but before you die, you will tell me where Tai Shan is. You will write the order that will release her." Val laughed at him. It was all he could do. "You will scream for the privilege of releasing that girl whose foolish interest in you probably betrayed her this evening," Chang Chien said, without emotion. Chang Chien stooped, reached under the table, and when he straightened, he held a small wire cage in his golden tapering fingers. A wire cage filled with scurrying, frantic movements, shrill, keening chatters of fright and rage, and a brown furry body that dashed from side to side in the upper half. At first, Val was puzzled. Two straps dangled from the bottom of the cage. It was partitioned in the middle. In the upper half, bounding about on the partition which formed a floor, was the gaunt, hungry body of a great savage rat. "He has been starved for a week," Chang Qian purred. "He is frightened, angry, desperate for escape." Speaking, Chang Qian set the cage on Bao's chest, passed one of the straps beneath Bao's bare torso, and buckled it on the other side, holding the cage firmly in place. There was no wire in the bottom, nothing but space between his flesh and the partition halfway up in the cage. "When I pull this slide out," Chang Qian said evenly, "he will drop to your chest. There for a time fright will keep him busy, but when he begins to think he will see that the only way out is through your chest, food and escape in one." Chang Qian smiled lazily, but his eyes were flaming. "Before he is won free," he said, "you will be a madman, Valentine Easton." And Val knew that it was so. Only an Oriental could devise such ghastly, terrible torture. He shuddered. Cold perspiration broke out on his forehead as he visualized those hours of agony in which sharp rodent teeth gnawed through flesh, nerves, bones on their way to freedom and satiated hunger. The rat had quieted now, was staring nervously about from little beady blinking eyes. The tapering fingers of Chang Qian's left hand caught the slide and drew it slowly out. The rat balanced precariously on it, and as the opening into the bottom of the cage widened before him, he thrust his head down, staring at the bare expanse of flesh below. Rigid, Val waited for the impact of tiny cold feet on his chest, and the horror that would quickly follow. And suddenly that ghastly, taut moment was broken into by the swift slide of books in the bookcase. Raising his head, Val saw volumes falling out of the second shelf from the top, volumes thrust aside by a hand that shoved through, holding a large caliber revolver. 9 slashing blades. Chang Qian started back from the cage, turned as if to flee, but a crackling command in sing-song Chinese from behind the bookcase stopped him. Rigid. The voice of Charlie Gong said, "Good now, unstrap him the cage first, and perhaps we'll put it on you quick, before I shoot, my friend." The sickle-shaped scar at the corner of Chang Qian's right eye flamed with silent passion. Silently, he turned to the table, fumbled with the straps, and set the wire cage down on the floor again. Still silently, he freed Val's neck, arms, ankles. Val swung to the floor, swayed a moment, and turned to the bookcase. The smiling face of Charlie Gong peered through at him. "Search him," said Charlie Gong. Val did so, found the long knife tucked in the waistband of Chang Qian's trousers, but no gun. "Now watch him," Charlie Gong directed. "I'm coming in. I would have shot him, but I was afraid it would bring the house down on our ears." Charlie Gong withdrew his gun, pushed open the bookcase, and stepped into the room. Chang Qian waited, hands in his sleeves, face impassive once more. He had spoken not a word. Charlie Gong closed the bookcase and stepped toward the table. One step he took on a small Chinese rug lying on the floor, and the rug suddenly dropped beneath his feet, and Charlie Gong vanished in a yawning hole in the floor. Vanished silently, his gun flying up above his head, and on his face a look of unutterable amazement. And as Charlie Gong dropped from sight, Chang Qian's hand came out of his sleeve holding a second knife. He whirled on Val like a great golden-skinned cat. "Now, Chang," Qian said, and the word came like a whiplash as he lunged forward, sweeping the knife up before him. Val was cornered against the table, hemmed in, unable to dodge. Chang Qian rushed suddenly, his knife upraised. Val did the only possible thing. He countered instantly. With the knife he held, his gleaming blade slashed out down, countering with the skill of one who had fenced much. The blades clashed metallically with a quick twist. Val threw himself to one side, pivoting his weight on the clashing blades. Chang Qian's knife was deflected, sliding on up, past Val's blade at an angle. Its keen point ripped skin and flesh above the elbow of Val's left arm as the blow swept on past into space. The force of Chang Qian's rush brought him hard against the edge of the table, his green mandarin coat brushing against the blood welling from Val's arm. And cat-like the big Chinese recovered himself and swung about for another stabbing blow. Val's right arm was free. He reversed his palm and smashed it toward Chang Qian's head. The solid, heavy end of the knife handle caught the big fellow squarely behind the ear. Chang Qian dropped like a poled ox, dropped and rolled over on the floor, his knife clutched in nerveless fingers. He never moved. The fresh scarlet blood from Val's arm stained the front of the green mandarin coat, and close beside it the great gaunt rat bounced in fright from side to side of the small wire cage. Waiting, suddenly weak from the nervous reaction, Val laid the knife on the table and picked up the torn fragments of his shirt. He mopped the blood off his arm. He had a gash, several inches long and a quarter of an inch deep, bleeding freely. Quickly he wrapped the shirt around it, tied a quick rough knot as best he could, and stepped to the square yawning hole in the floor. "Charlie Gong," he called down cautiously. "From the black well-like hole." Charlie Gong's voice came up surprisingly cheerful. "Astonishing. I thought you would be dead by now, Easton. Still kicking, our friend is out cold." "You should have killed him," said Charlie Gong cheerfully. "Sorry, I can't help you. Better get out of the house as quickly as you can if you can. Don't know how many men they've got." "Where is Bradshaw? How did you get in? I thought you'd lost us. I'd given you up." "We had a puncture," Charlie Gong explained. "Last we saw of you, the car was heading into Westchester. We came on, looked around, no sign of you, bad business. Bradshaw was stumped, and then we suddenly ran into a string of cars leaving someplace hurriedly. We found the drive they were coming out of and walked in to investigate." "Hand bless you," said Charlie Gong, in his flawless English. "There was the car we had been following. Standing in front of the house, the driver was behind the wheel. I surprised him. We took him off in the fog, and I talked Cantonese to him after I had knocked his front teeth out. He talked to me as one brother to another. There was trouble inside. He said his partner had blundered one day and would perhaps die for it. 2 strangers had been caught in the house." Charlie Gong's voice floated up out of the darkness, calm and careless, with no hint of the drama and bravery he was recording. "There was no time to go for help. I doubted if you were alive even then. I slugged the fellow after he had told me all I wanted to know, took his cap and coat, and walked to the front door. The man at the door let me in, thinking I was the driver. We Chinese have moments of reason. It wasn't difficult for me to persuade him to bring me upstairs to you. Our friend Chang Qian was talking when I arrived on the other side of the bookcase. I let him finish before I rudely interrupted his modest pleasures. You will find the doorman on the other side of the bookcase, on the floor. Where is Nancy Fraser? I don't know. I wanted to get you first. Better get out of here quick and send Bradshaw for help. From what Chang Qian said, I doubt if she's harmed yet. How about you? Can you get out of there? No, said Charlie Gong casually. I am underground, I think. The walls are stone and damp, leakage from the beach probably. I must be below water level. Besides, my leg is broken. And not until then did Val have the full measure of that little Chinese detective. Val looked about. There were no windows in the room. Impossible to try to get Charlie Gong with his broken leg out of the house. He would be safer down there. I am going, said Val. I'll do the best I can. Good luck. And by the way, I understand you are mystified about how that chap got off Burkett's roof. The chauffeur was driving the same car for that job. He kindly told me before I broke his head that your man swung down from the 7th floor window of an apartment they had rented in the building adjoining. The space between it and the roof edge of Burkett's private gallery was 2 or 3 yards. By pushing hard, this Zakin crossed the gap, stood on the roof. One of his men followed him and slid on down the rope into the backyard. After dispensing of the watchman there, he entered the back door when no one was looking and slipped down into the cellar. After putting the lights out, he left without discovery, in the darkness. Climbed up to the roof again and swung across the space into the 3rd-story window of the second apartment they had rented. This Carl Zakin followed in the same way. They walked out of the door of their apartment house, around the corner, to their car and drove away. Everything had been planned. I understand, from the moment when the report had come from China that the mask of Quan Ti had been smuggled out of the country. Chen's agent had been looking for it there. I tell you all this. Charlie Gong's cheerful voice floated up out of the darkness. In case I am unable to talk when you find me again. Good luck. Val left him there. That gallant little fellow, and naked to the waist as he was, with blood-stained arm and side, he opened the bookcase and stepped through. He could have asked Charlie Gong to try to throw his revolver up deliberately. He left that comfort to Charlie Gong. The bookcase was double with books facing out on both sides. Val found himself in a bedroom. He stepped over the inert form of the doorman, crossed the room, opened a door into the hall, and was greeted by an exclamation of astonishment. Coming toward him, 2 paces away, was a blue-clad, saffron-skinned servant, carrying a big leather kit bag in one hand. He dropped the kit bag and turned to scurry along the hall. Val caught him in the first step, succeeded in throttling most of his squall of fright. With a full arm sweep, he shoved the fellow against the wall and smashed him in the jaw. The first blow didn't do it, but the second and third did. He left the fellow there on the floor. The hall turned at both ends. No stairs were visible. It was impossible to tell which way to go. Val went in the direction from which his victim had been coming. He made the turn to the left, found steps a short distance beyond, narrow steps that turned at right angles as they went down. Blood was dripping from Val's arm, staining his torso. He still carried the knife in his right hand. Hair rumpled, face set, blood smeared. He was a startling and savage sight. At the bottom of the stairs he found another hall. This big old stone house seemed to be a tangle of rooms and halls. Fate decided his direction this time. A door slammed to his left. He went to the right. Another door slammed behind him. He heard steps shuffling in his direction, men talking excitedly in Chinese. Val opened the first door he came to. It happened to be on the left. He stepped through and stood stock still, nerves tense. He was in the big vaulted room where he had been throttled unconscious. The dais, the throne-like chair, the great silver and gold tapestry, and all the other furnishings were still in place. But the room was empty. His own cautious steps sounded loud. Val hesitated, stared. He knew now how to get to the front entrance, to leave the house. But what would happen while he was gone? Could he get back in the house, find Nancy, Fraser? Val turned his back on the door, which led to the open, free night outside, turned his back and went to the dais. Carl Zakin had disappeared from behind that great tapestry. He might still be found beyond there. Val clutched the knife ready as he stepped nimbly upon the dais and approached the tapestry. The Black Doctor would get short shrift if they met, and Val sought that meeting silently. He slipped through the tapestry and found an open door in the alcove behind it. He went down the steps at the back of the dais, through the door, and found himself in another hall. The great brass gong that had been struck hung from 2 uprights by the wall. The striker leaned beside it. The hall was empty. Walking carefully along, Val suddenly heard a muffled voice saying, "It will be too late. In a few minutes. Too late. It's your last chance to help him. Who knew you were coming here?" And Nancy's voice, shaken, desperate, denying, saying bravely, "No one knew. Let me think. I can't think. Give me time. Don't do anything to him yet. Where is Tai Shan?" "I don't know." And Carl Zakin's harsh voice, "I have a way, Miss Fraser, of stimulating memory. Perhaps this will do." Nancy cried out with pain. Val sprang into the room, through a red haze of anger. There, opposite the door, sat Nancy, tied in a chair. And standing over her was the tall, stooped figure of the Black Doctor, twisting one wrist cold-bloodedly and methodically. On a table close by them rested the jade mask of the Emperor Qiangxi. Nancy saw Val enter the room. Her eyes widened. Her face puckered in astonishment through her pain at sight of his blood-smeared figure. Carl. Zakin saw her face and whirled one look, and Zakin reached under his coat, under his left arm. Val leaped at him, swinging the knife. The Black Doctor met him with a gun snapped out from a shoulder holster, a gun that roared caught Val in mid-stride. Val felt the shock of the bullet striking his shoulder, spinning him off balance, so that he staggered. That saved him from the second hasty shot that roared from Carl Zakin's gun, point blank, for this shot went between Val's arm and side. Val heard Nancy cry out with fear, and then he was on that tall, stooped figure, whose pale, cadaverous face was snarling like a death mask. Val knocked the gun away, as the third shot roared out, slashed across and down with the knife. The keen edge cut deep to the bone across Carl Zakin's knuckles. The Black Doctor cried out with the pain of it. His nerveless fingers opened. The gun fell to the floor. Zakin scrambled back away from the menace of that flashing knife. He struck the table, knocked it over. The jade mask fell to the floor with a ringing sound, but such was the quality of that ancient jade that it did not break. At the moment, however, Val had no thought for it, as he followed that scrambling figure across the room. Carl Zakin caught a chair in passing, swung it around. Val threw up an arm, but the chair struck him heavily, drove him back, stopped him dead for a moment, dizzy with pain. And in that moment, the Black Doctor plunged to the side wall of the room, bolted through a second door, slammed it. When Val reached it, the door would not open. A bolt had been shot on the other side. The Black Doctor was gone. His voice shouting could be heard receding on the other side. Val swung quickly, shaking his head to clear it. Quickly, he cut Nancy loose from the chair. "You are wounded. You are bleeding." "Never mind," Val panted. "Come with me quick." "We got a chance to get out. A bare chance. God knows how many of them are in the house here." On the way to the door, he scooped up the jade mask and the gun Zakin had dropped. The hall was empty, as he burst out into it ahead of Nancy, but somewhere to the back, voices were answering the Black Doctor's shouts. "This way," Val threw at her. He led her to the end of the hall, past the great gong, up the steps to the dais, through the tapestry curtain, and down across the big room where they had been trapped. Those three roaring shots, the Black Doctor's shouts, had brought life to that ominously quiet house. As they neared the door which they had passed through earlier in the night, it opened, and two blue-clad Orientals, knives in hands, rushed through. Val shot the first one without slackening his pace. The second one squealed with fright, doubled back through the door, slamming it, but not locking it. Val jerked it open, rushed through the clamor. Behind them grew louder as more men joined in the pursuit. That run to the front door seemed endless, but they made it without further opposition. The guard was gone. Charlie Gong had taken care of him. Val jerked the door in, kicked open the storm door, and suddenly they were both out in the dank, dark, fog-filled night. The big, ivy-covered stone house loomed behind them, black, seemingly deserted, but with the rising cacophony of furious pursuit, sounding inside like a hive of bees erupting. They stumbled down the steps. Headlights suddenly glowed through the fog ahead of them. Val raised the gun, shouting, "Bradshaw! Bradshaw! Where are you?" And where the headlights were, the voice of Bradshaw called. "Here!" Bradshaw was by the car. It was Bradshaw who took in the situation in a flash, slid behind the wheel, stamped on the starter, and as they tumbled in the back, started the big limousine with a lurch. They roared off into the fog just as pandemonium burst out of the house. And the fog, which had veiled its mystery earlier, now saved them. It blotted out the trouble in pursuit behind. Bradshaw left his own car where he had parked it and drove swiftly to Westchester Avenue, to the first light, the first telephone. And it ended that way. The house was deserted when the police squad got there. Charlie Gong, broken leg and cheerful grin, was in the well-like prison into which he had fallen. But Chang, Ching, Chi, and Carl Zakin, The Black Doctor were gone. There was no trace of Cartier Burkett's report. But Burkett was alive. Could write another shortly. And the mask, the precious jade mask of Emperor Qiangxi, was safe. No mad leader would incite yellow-skinned millions to follow the god of war.